Chapter 1199. Wang Ling pulled out the omniscient elephant pillar stuck in the sun spirit's body, and the pitch-black pillar instantly shrank to the size of a toothpick in his hand. Using the power of the king's eye to search repeatedly, Wang Ling realized that he couldn't find the corresponding material to cast this omniscient elephant pillar in any of the 10 universes. Wang Ling was secretly astonished. Like his king's eye, this pillar wasn't part of Tao. Pinching the shrunken pillar between 2 fingers, he carefully pondered what the sun spirit had just said. Behind the void gate is emptiness. Then what on earth was this emptiness? There was no lack of people in this world who felt empty. Sometimes, even Wang Ling himself would feel completely empty. Could it be that the person who lived behind the void gate was also an expert who stood in an invincible place like him, and often felt lonely and empty? But this was just Wang Ling's speculation. If he wanted an answer, he would have to open the void gate and find out. You're very strong. At that moment, the hollow voice of the sun spirit, which was like that of a benevolent old man, rang out in the air once again. As a cosmic spirit that had lived for billions of years, the sun spirit had its own ideas and insights. I've lived for billions of years. Compared to me, all the cultivators on Earth are but a drop in the ocean. No human can live for billions of years. But in the entire universe, I'm just like an ant. Anyone who enters the void gate will die. Perhaps this isn't a place you can set foot in. What surprised Wang Ling was that the sun spirit, who never nagged, was actually saying so much to warn him. What magic treasure is this? Wang Ling asked as he pinched the thin black needle in his hand. He had been studying it for a long time, but still couldn't figure out what it was. This is a void object derived from the void gate. If even you can't figure it out, then that's enough to prove that what's behind the void gate isn't something you can touch. The sun spirit's tone was very indifferent when it said this, but in its heart, it was secretly glad that Wang Ling had actually suffered a setback. The truth was that as the sun spirit, it didn't know what on earth was behind the void gate, nor did it know whether Wang Ling would die if he stepped into the void gate. However, in the long river of history, the sun spirit had witnessed too many creatures who had tried to cross the void gate and died. This was not a legend, but an existence on par with the gate between worlds and the gate of the heavenly Tao. So far, the void gate was the only one he hadn't seen yet. Behind the gate between worlds was the demon realm. This was an artificial door designed by immortal Zhenyuan. Because it wasn't stable, it often appeared on Earth without permission and brought disaster. The gate of Heavenly Tao led directly to the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee, where the 6 great Heavenly Tao were located. As a whitelist user, every time Wang Ling went there, it was like returning home. Judging from this, Wang Ling felt that the void gate might also be connected to another world. It was just that this void gate looked especially low-key. If there really was some kind of advanced creature inside, then Wang Ling felt that it was indeed low-key enough. Perhaps it was because he was too strong, so he felt disdain. But these were just his speculations. Although he was curious about the void gate, it hadn't disturbed his normal life thus far, nor had it disturbed him from eating his crispy noodle snacks. Thus, Wang Ling couldn't take the initiative to open the void gate. It wasn't that he couldn't open it, but that he didn't think it would be too violent to tear down someone else's door without a proper reason. As for this omniscient elephant pillar which the sun spirit had defined as an object of the void, Wang Ling felt that it would be better to return it at the right time. After all, it belonged to someone else. It was Friday, November 21st, the 7th day of the National Cultivation School Body Technique Competition, and there was still 1 day left until the end. Wang Ling and Crispy Noodle Snacks exchanged their identities in the temporary toilet set up by No. 60 High's camp. After confirming the time, Wang Ling realized that when he and Wang Ying had fought in space, 3 days had already passed on Earth. This was probably the after-effect of the King's Eye's ability to stop time. Stopping time in an area would result in a time difference with the outside world. It was just that Wang Ling hadn't thought too much about it at the time. He was just glad that he hadn't stopped time for too long, otherwise he might have directly graduated from high school, and this book would have come to an end at that time. After a full 7 days, it was already the final moment to decide the winner. When Wang Ling came out of the toilet, he found that everyone else from the other schools had already left. Crispy Noodle Snacks had compiled a memory chain of everything that had happened during this period of time and transmitted it to Wang Ling. Little Silver, Loopy Toad, and Wang Zhen's mission had gone very smoothly. All the flowers of the living dead in the stalactite cave which had been pregnant with the embryo had been completely destroyed. They had rescued Old Huang, and the fake Old Huang had been taken down by President Qi and Jua in one fell swoop. Of all the experts who had been resurrected, only Li Xiaokai's master Li Huanran and Jiang Yingyue had survived. Li Huanran's existence was beneficial to the study of the Void Gate. At the same time, Jiang Yingyue would be an excellent witness to the chaos this time. President Qi needed her as a witness to report to the head of state. Of course, the main reason why Jiang Yingyue had survived was because of Mother Wang. That evil remnant, who had pretended to be Mother Wang and used Numinous Mother to swindle people everywhere, was everyone's next target. After Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal actively communicated with Huaxiao Alliance, they decided to issue a worldwide arrest warrant after verifying the relevant details. On the other side, on the 6th day of the competition, the camps formed by the schools broke up after they divided up the resources they had obtained during the Alliance period. The schools who were still alive agreed to avoid fighting in the following day, and made a gentleman's oath. If someone from a school broke the rules and launched a sneak attack on another school in advance, they would be despised by all the other schools. Although it was said that all was fair in a competition, if someone broke the oath to win the championship, they would be despised by everyone even if they did. Now, the 7th day had arrived, and it was also the deadline for the gentleman's oath. Wang Ling looked at the numbers displayed on the domed mountain. Now, all the schools added up had less than 80 people left. Wang Ling took stock of the remaining people from number 60 high school. Good heavens, not a single person from number 60 high school had left. Of the less than 80 people left, their number 60 high school accounted for close to 10% of them. In contrast, the other schools seemed to be in a more tragic state. Take the previous favorites for the championship as an example. Number of people remaining from South Sea Sky High School, 4. Number of people remaining from Titan High School, 3. Number of people remaining from Balance Flame High School, 1. In contrast, number 60 high school was as steady as an old dog. Chapter 1200. Number 60 high's overwhelming advantage in numbers might seem like a good thing, but in Wang Ling's view, it was actually pushing number 60 high into the teeth of the storm. Checks and balances were important in a large-scale competition. When the other schools saw that number 60 high was still at full strength, they might form an alliance again in the last 2 days to get rid of number 60 high first. In fact, Wang Ling's worries soon became reality. Apart from us, there are 11 surviving schools out of the remaining 60-odd people. They've already received reliable information, and have decided to send one person each to form a vanguard coalition army to encircle and annihilate us first. At noon, Lotus Sun explained the current situation to everyone through Mysterious Ocean's holographic water map. After the schools learned that number 60 high was still at full strength, led by the perception-type expert Nan Isho, they immediately formed a coalition army of 11 people in an attempt to launch an attack on number 60 high. It didn't necessarily have to be a one-for-one exchange. Even if number 60 high lost some members, that would still be good. This is the critical stage. The final score of the competition will be calculated based on accumulated points, survival points, and bonus points. In the early and middle stages of the competition, everyone will cooperate with each other to survive, so there shouldn't be a lot of points for each school. But if we can rely on our numerical advantage to hold on, our number 60 high will gain a huge advantage in terms of survival points, and even win directly. Lotus Sun said confidently. Survival points were the most important factor. When the final tally of the survival battle came on the 8th day, Points would be calculated based on the final number of people in each school's delegation. One person who survived would get an extra 100 points. If number 60 high didn't lose any members by the last day, they would be able to pull away from the other schools by a large margin. Compared with accumulating points in battle, this was the fastest way. While Lotus Sun was discussing the battle plan, Wang Zhen, Gu Xuanji and the others were bored to death as they stared at the sky. There was almost no suspense in this competition for number 60 high. It was almost the last day, but number 60 high actually hadn't lost a single person. This actually felt a little unreal. They had come to learn how to act from Wang Ling, but their acting wasn't even real at all. Thus, the following conversation took place in an independent mental space. Shen Yuan hissed. Isn't our acting too fake? It's almost over, but no one has fallen. Gu Xuanji nodded and couldn't agree more with Shen Yuan's point of view. Venerated Immortal is right, I also think it's a little fake. Why don't someone demonstrate how to make your death more natural? Lu Qingyi quickly came up with a plan. This Wang Zhen is really good. Wang Zhen, thus, just as Lotus Sun's side came up with a plan to deal with the enemy, Wang Zhen started to drag Lu Qingyi and the others along to jump off the cliff. This was the plan that Gu Xuanji and the others had discussed together. If number 60 high really won the championship by a large margin, it might be a little like attracting hatred. Thus, Gu Xuanji calculated that if the four of them withdrew from the competition now, not only would they help the other schools save some face, they would also narrow the gap and help number 60 high win the competition by a small margin. Of course, if they were to jump too directly, it would seem like they were going easy on him, so it was crucial to act realistically. The leap of faith was a very romantic thing, especially when a man and a woman were together. It gave off a special feeling. Thus, on the evening of the seventh day, the vanguard force of the number 60 high must die alliance, which consisted of the remaining 11 schools led by South Sea Sky High and Titan High, received new news. The message was simple. On number 60 high's side, 4 people had been killed. Nan Yixio's first reaction when he heard the news was naturally a black face full of question marks. Their premeditated attack hadn't even started yet, so how could 4 people be dead? I heard that in the beginning, someone fell off the cliff while gathering spirit fruit, and the people behind him went to catch him, but in the end, they were all taken down. Are they all right? They triggered the golden light shield, what could possibly happen to them? For some reason, Nan Yixio didn't seem very happy when he heard this news. Instead, he sensed a conspiracy. He was the leader of this vanguard force, and had originally planned to launch a sneak attack on number 60 high's camp that night, mainly because number 60 high was currently at full strength, which was very disadvantageous to the other schools. But now that 4 people had died all at once, there was actually no need to organize this operation in theory. Apart from Nan Yixio himself, the other 11 people in number 60 high's vanguard team had been carefully selected to represent the middle combat strength of each school, which was also very crucial right now. Number 60 high's numbers were basically the same as those of the senior schools, so there was indeed no need to take any more risks. But Nan Yixio still felt that there was something fishy about this. He had spent 6 days with the people from number 60 high. Number 60 high's overall combat strength wasn't outstanding, and the school's overall combat strength was in the middle of the pack. Student Lotus Sun was indeed very good, but in a team game, one person's excellence was useless. At that moment, a drop of rain landed on the tip of Nan Yixio's nose, and then exploded. Nan Yixio raised his head, and suddenly realized that it was actually drizzling. This kind of weather was actually extremely disadvantageous for a sneak attack. Although they were already here, there really didn't seem to be any need for a sneak attack. They hadn't even made a move, but 4 people from number 60 high had already died. But in the next moment, Nan Yixio's expression changed dramatically. Not good. What's wrong? We've fallen into a trap. Nan Yishio's eyes lit up at that moment as he realized that there was a great danger here. Unfortunately, it was already too late. In the dense mountain forest in the distance, several beams of golden light shield had already shot up into the sky. It's over, it's all over. Nan Yishio looked at the increasing number of golden beams of light, unable to hide the despair on his face. No matter how much he had calculated, he had overlooked the important factor of the weather. Lotus Sun, who had already awakened a sword spirit, especially in a rainy operation, and her mysterious sea sword would almost give her an absolute advantage. It was like fighting on her home ground. She could borrow the power of the rain to identify each person's position, and then remotely control sword chi to take them down one by one. It might be difficult for Lotus Sun to do this on her own, but number 60 High's camp still had 6 people. In addition, Lotus Sun had used the various materials they had collected in the coalition army a few days ago, and combined them with her own pill-making machine to quickly refine elixirs that could replenish spirit chi. In this heavy rain, Lotus Sun could practically do whatever she wanted. It could only be said that as expected of the young miss of Huagua Water Curtain Group and the captain of number 60 High, she could actually scheme to this extent. Chapter 1201. No one had expected Lotus Sun to take advantage of the heavy rain to use the power of mysterious sea sword spirit to wield sword chi from a distance to destroy the enemy, although in the end, not everyone was eliminated. On the 8th day, there were 12 people left on the field. Number 60 High had 6. The other 6 were Nan Yishio from South Sea Sky High, 4 Eyes, who had been with Wang Jin earlier, Zhu Hanyun from Titan High, junior sister Yen Xiaochun from the same school, Tang Jingze from number 59 High, and Yi Jiang, the team leader from Sword God Academy. Number 60 High's team knew more or less about the others, but they were curious about Yi Jiang's background. What kind of school is Sword God Academy? Super Chen rubbed his head, feeling confused. I think an uncle mentioned it to me before. It's a newly established cultivation high school in Jinghua City. I didn't expect such a young school to have someone in the national competition for the first time. But I don't know who this Yi Jiang is. There were too many students participating in the competition, and even uncles like Dopey Guo couldn't remember every single one of them clearly. The point was that Sword God Academy wasn't on Headmaster Chen's list of precautions to begin with. Now that someone had suddenly broken out of the encirclement, the contestants from all the schools were taken aback. If the competition hadn't started yet, Hero Guo might have been able to find out Yi Jiang's identity through other means. But now that they were in a competition, even if he had a way out of the ring, he couldn't use it openly. In the command center, old Huang sipped hot tea. He was wrapped in a thick cotton quilt, which was a special magic treasure that could dispel the cold and strengthen one's body. This was the real old Huang. Previously, he had been trapped in the cold pool in the stalactite cave, and his entire body had been frozen. "Teacher, are you feeling better?" President Qi asked concernedly. "I'm already a lot better." Old Huang gazed at Yi Jiang on the screen. "By the way, could this person be, teacher, you're absolutely right." President Qi nodded with a smile. Sword God Academy students naturally specialized in swordsmanship, and the team leader was surnamed Yi. How many people in the world of swordsmanship could compete with this Yi Jiang? Elder Huang studied Yi Jiang's appearance carefully. Then, he frowned and shook his head slightly. He transmitted his voice, "He doesn't look like him. Also, I remember that Yi Jianchuan is a 1,000-year-old virgin who doesn't have a wife. When did he have such a big son? He's not his own." President Qi smiled and replied telepathically. "This. Old Huang from next door." Elder Huang was astonished. "Teacher, you think too much. This is a child that oldie picked up more than 10 years ago. It is said that he was born with a sword bone. He saw that he was a promising talent, so he adopted him as his son." So that was how it was. Old Huang was relieved. Now, all the doubts in his heart were resolved. In the middle of the 7th night, Lotus Sun's sword rain baptism had directly eliminated most of the people. Among the many split screens in front of him, Old Huang immediately recognized Yi Jiang in the corner. At that time, Yi Jiang had been sitting alone on the cliff, his pure white school uniform swaying in the wind. He hadn't brandished any magic artifacts, and had only plucked a handful of grass from the ground to fuse his sword intent into it. He had used the power of the grass to form a powerful sword screen, which had withstood Mysterious Sea's sword rain baptism. No one would have thought that on the last day of the competition, there would actually be a batch of dark horses like this. It was Saturday, November 22nd, the 8th day of the National Cultivation School Body Technique Competition. After a discussion among the surviving students, everyone unanimously decided that the final battle would be a one-on-one duel on the Round Top Mountain. The opponents would be decided by drawing lots. How about we write the names of all the people from number 60 high on a piece of paper, and the 6 of you each draw one? Nan Yishio suggested. The 6 of you want to challenge the 6 of us from number 60 high. Then why don't we write your names together? Super Chen felt that this was unfair. A one-on-one duel was already the biggest concession number 60 high could make. Otherwise, given the current situation, number 60 high could completely attack as a group and defeat them one by one. There was no need for them to fight on the Round Top Mountain at all. The reason why Lotus Sun had agreed to the one-on-one duel was actually because she had followed Headmaster Chen's instructions. There was no other reason, and the main reason was to leave the other schools some face and hope. If they really fought them as a group, the chances of the other schools winning were minuscule. Furthermore, a one-on-one duel would make the competition more enjoyable to watch, and Lotus Sun especially liked this feeling. But in the end, this wasn't something Super Chen could decide, and he had to listen to Lotus Sun's instructions when leading the team. One-on-one is fine. The victory of this competition is destined to belong to number 60 high. If this can convince you, that's fine too. This decision wasn't because Lotus Sun was too arrogant and conceited, but because she truly had confidence in everyone from number 60 high. After the baptism of her Mysterious Sea sword rain last night, almost everyone from the other schools had been exhausted. Furthermore, they already didn't have any extra supplies to replenish their spirit chi and physical strength. Oh no! 60 High's side, on the other hand, because Lotus Sun was constantly producing pills, everyone's spirit chi, physical strength and mental state were all relatively excellent. Thus, even if it was a one-on-one duel, Lotus Sun felt that number 60 high would still have the upper hand. Then it's a deal. Hearing that Lotus Sun had agreed to the duel, Nan Yishio was beyond excited. He took out the bamboo sticks that he had prepared beforehand and placed them in the bamboo tube for the 6 people on his side to draw. The names of each person from number 60 high were written on the bamboo sticks. Student Tang and Student Yi, you have the fewest number of people, so you get priority. Alright. Tang Jingza stepped forward and drew a stick, but the person who drew it was Super Chen, which disappointed him a little since he actually wanted to fight Wang Ling more. Yi Jiang, on the other hand, held his temper and crossed his arms with a rather cold expression on his face. I don't need it. You can just give the rest to me. All right. Nan Yishio's lips curled up. After everyone had drawn lots, the dueling list had also been finalized. The first round of the promotion round. Tang Jingza against Hero Guo, Yi Jiang against Lotus Sun, Zhu Hanyun against Super Chin, Yan Xiaochun against Li Yuyue, Four Eyes in South Sea Sky against Yao Ming. And the last person, Nan Yishio, drew was Wang Ling. In fact, it was Nan Yishio who had arranged all the draws. Nan Yishio drawing Wang Ling had also been part of his plan, and he had drawn classmate Wang Ling, who was known as number 60 high's mascot, a top-class horse against a low-class horse. According to the rules of Tianji's horse race, Nan Yishio felt that he was very confident of advancing to the first round. Thinking this, Nan Yishio curled his lips and was secretly delighted. Classmate Wang Ling, I'm sorry. Wang Ling. Chapter 1202. After the lots were drawn, the one-on-one match officially began. There weren't any fancy rules, because everyone had a protective golden talisman. As long as the protective golden talisman's life-saving effect was triggered, the match would be considered a victory. At that moment, there were only 12 people left on the domed mountain, but including the members of the special forces patrolling nearby, the commanders in the command center, the headmasters of each school, and the netizens who had been watching the live stream for several days, there were hundreds of millions of people watching this national body technique competition. The main reason this competition had attracted so much attention and discussion was that it was jointly organized by Huaxiao Alliance and the most popular sect in the world, the Office of Strategic Deception. The students who could survive until the last day were the cream of the crop among the current foundation establishment cultivators in the cultivation world, which was an important reference for parents in the cultivation world when choosing schools in the future. The first match was between Zhu Hanyun of Titan High School and Super Chin. In this situation, the contest between these two muscular men seemed to be particularly interesting. But Hero Guo wasn't optimistic about the outcome. Zhu Hanyun is the captain of Titan High School. Although he's exhausted physically, can Super Chin win? First of all, the Titan art that Zhu Hanyun cultivated was already very troublesome. His muscles were denser than an ordinary person's, and even if Super Chin used a spirit sword to slash out sword chi, he might not be able to pierce through it. Most importantly, this was a one-on-one duel on the surface. Using a spirit sword in a chaotic fight for survival was fine, but as a fair one-on-one duel, everyone couldn't help but think back to the original theme of this national competition, body technique. If they still used a spirit sword in this situation, there was an 80 to 90% chance that they would be accused of having an unfair advantage. Zhu Hanyun sighed, who couldn't use a spirit sword and had to rely purely on body technique, had a natural advantage over Super Chin, who cultivated the Titan art and was famous for his body technique. But even so, Super Chin still had to fight. He wasn't a coward. As a descendant of Strength Super Martial Arts Dojo, he knew that his father would definitely be paying attention to this match. Looking at the abnormally powerful Zhu Hanyun in front of him, Super Chin felt a little bitter in his heart, but his attention was also raised to the extreme. Of course he knew how strong Zhu Hanyun was. In the first round, the other party had used his strength, which surpassed that of an ordinary foundation establishment cultivator, to turn himself into a cannon and launch his school students one by one from the ground to the top of the tower. A total of 700,000 steps were taken in a single leap. This had given Super Chin a huge shock at the time. While Super Chin was thinking, Dopigua's voice suddenly rang out. Super Chin, don't you like these kinds of muscular men the most? Fight him head on. Who's afraid of who? Even if I can't win, I'll still kill him with milk. Super Chin looked helpless. Wang Ling was also deeply aware that it wasn't good to be a milk of utility. Super Chen's blessed mouth would only work if it wasn't affected by any distracting thoughts. On the other side, Zhu Hanyun, who was also a muscular bro, seemed particularly enthusiastic about the word milk, and his expression gradually turned excited. Classmate Super Chin, you want to milk me? What a pity. Your chest isn't as big as mine. As soon as he said that, Zhu Hanyun threw a punch at Super Chin like a cannonball. Both of them were at the peak late foundation establishment stage. There was no difference in realms, but the advantage in cultivation techniques couldn't be ignored. Whether it was in terms of strength or speed, Zhu Hanyun's punch was actually above the peak late foundation establishment stage, and was almost infinitely close to the strength of an early golden core cultivator. Any student at the same realm might not be able to withstand the power of this punch. What was more, this wasn't an ordinary punch. Wang Ling could see wind and thunder twisting around Zhu Hanyun's fist as it came crashing down. Based on his Heavenly Dao spell, Zhu Hanyun's punch was probably a level 3 fist technique called Wind and Thunder Shock. It was already very astonishing for a foundation establishment student to learn a level 3 spirit technique. Although Zhu Hanyun looked like he had just learned it, it could still greatly enhance the power of an ordinary fist. In the blink of an eye, the punch had already reached Super Chin. To everyone's surprise, Super Chin didn't dodge at all. His eyes were fixed on the path of Zhu Hanyun's fist, and just as it was about to reach him, he suddenly shifted his position and used a skillful force to attack Zhu Hanyun's flank at the same time. Is this pushing hand? In the command center, all the headmasters watched this scene. Super Chen's pushing hand was simple and unadorned, but it made Zhu Hanyun's powerful blow feel like it had smashed heavily into a ball of cotton. Interesting, he actually thought of using the strength of 1,000 caddies to deal with it. Old Huang nodded in approval. He had seen it clearly from here. Zhu Hanyun's punch was extremely fast, and an average foundation establishment cultivator wouldn't be able to catch it at all. Pushing hand wasn't a complicated skill, but if you wanted to use it in actual combat, it would be very difficult for you to deal with an enemy unless you had painstakingly cultivated it for many years. It was like those people who thought they had actual combat ability after learning a set of army boxing. Learning and putting it into practice were two different things. Super Chen's ability to react so quickly in such a short period of time was something that could only be achieved after years of practice. But praise aside, Old Huang still didn't know who would win this fight. He could see that Super Chen had a lot of combat experience. Perhaps it was because he had grown up in his family's martial arts dojo, and had seen a lot, learned a lot, and practiced a lot. Naturally, he had more combat experience than an ordinary person. But his opponent was the captain of Titan High School. If he thought that he could defeat the enemy with just one pushing hand, he would be underestimating Zhu Hanyun too much. Although he had lost the first move, Zhu Hanyun wasn't discouraged, and instead became braver as the fight went on. Once he was sure that Super Chin would play the for caddies to deal with 1,000 caddies routine, Zhu Hanyun quickly changed his boxing style. If the wind and thunder shock at the beginning was about explosive power, then the chaotic rain Zhu Hanyun was now using, which relied on attack speed. Pushing hands, which could push 1,000 caddies with little effort, might have a surprising effect in the face of an explosive fist technique. But now that Zhu Hanyun had turned into a speed-type attack, even if Super Chin knew how to push hands, it would be of no use in the face of such a barrage of attacks. There was a rustling sound in the field, and each of Zhu Hanyun's punches landed solidly on Super Chen's body. Is he going to lose? Everyone from number 60 high school was extremely nervous. After the first round of attacks, Super Chen's face was covered in bruises, and he had even lost one of his teeth. It looked like he had already suffered an extremely serious injury. But to everyone's surprise, Super Chen's protective golden talisman hadn't been triggered. Under such astonishing attacks, his life-saving effect actually hadn't been triggered. Everyone was stupefied. As long as the protective golden talisman hadn't been triggered, it meant that Super Chin could still fight. This man's tenacity exceeded even Zhu Hanyun's expectations. Chapter 1203. After 2 rounds, it looked like Super Chin was just taking a beating. His face was already swollen like a pig's head, his body was covered in bruises, and even the upper half of his school uniform had been smashed by Zhu Hanyun's punches. Chaotic Rain was a high-density and high-attack technique, and its lethality was staggering. However, Zhu Hanyun wasn't completely unscathed under the relentless onslaught. After 2 rounds of one-sided attacks, his aura was already a little unstable. Zhu Hanyun wouldn't be able to use Chaotic Rain a second time in a short period of time, since it was a fist technique that tested endurance and energy consumption. Most importantly, Zhu Hanyun actually still had some misgivings, and hadn't completely let loose. Considering that he could advance to the next round, Zhu Hanyun wanted to preserve some of his physical strength and spirit energy for the next round of battle. He had thought that his Chaotic Rain move would be enough to trigger Super Chen's protective golden talisman, but unfortunately, the situation didn't go his way. Although it looked like Super Chin had already reached his limit, and he might be able to trigger the protective golden talisman with just one ordinary punch, a competition was a competition, and there was no room for luck. Zhu Hanyun felt that he had miscalculated against Super Chin. If he hadn't taken the competition into account when he had used Chaotic Rain in the second round, and had instead focused on dealing with the current situation, Super Chin might have already been eliminated. But unfortunately, there were no ifs in this world. I've been studying martial arts under my father's guidance since I was a child, and I've grown up with various senior brothers and sisters. I'm afraid it won't be that easy for you to knock me down. Super Chin wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Although his teeth had been broken, this injury might really be nothing to him. In order to write his essay, Wang Ling had specially flipped through Super Chen's childhood memories, and the toughness in Super Chen's bones had really been passed down from his ancestors. Fighting above one's level was commonplace. If the people you practiced with since you were a child were always 2 or 3 levels higher than you on average, you might also be able to take a beating like this. So, this kind of man wouldn't just knock down like that. From this point of view, Super Chin and Wang Zhen were actually a little similar. The difference was that Super Chin had been forced to take a beating when he practiced with others, while Wang Zhen had been actively trained since he was a child, and even had to beat himself up. So when Wang Zhen, who was watching from the sidelines at that moment, saw Super Chen's indomitable spirit, he couldn't help sighing with emotion in his heart. This was a promising talent. While Super Chin was talking, Zhu Hanyun quickly adjusted his breathing. As the team leader of Titan High School, even if he couldn't help the school win the competition in the end, he absolutely couldn't lose to an ordinary number 60 high representative. Classmate Super Chin, why are you doing this? A helpless expression appeared on Zhu Hanyun's face. You should make better use of your golden protective light. Relying on your own tenacity to persevere in the competition will only bring you harm. Although my chaotic rain flow just now was lenient and didn't directly attack your vital acupuncture points, but at the same time, I sealed off many of your acupuncture points. You should already be unable to use your spiritual power now. Under the state of having your spirit sealed by me, you basically have no chance of winning. Why don't you surrender earlier? As soon as he finished speaking, the scene boiled up again. Super Chen's spirit has been sealed. Hero Guo frowned deeply. Sealing a spirit was like hitting an acupoint. Although it was only temporary, it was absolutely taboo for a cultivator to have their spirit sealed in the middle of a fight. Hearing Zhu Hanyun's words, Super Chin clenched his teeth. Even if it's a spirit sealed, it won't be so easy for you to defeat me. Maybe you even help me open up some Rendu Ermai, making me stronger. Hearing this, Zhu Hanyun immediately sneered. What a joke, do you think this kind of thing can happen to you? In the process of receiving a one-sided beating, there was indeed the possibility of an acupoint being opened up, but the probability was so low that it was almost the same as winning the lottery. But in the third round, Super Chin was the first to attack. Even though he was injured all over, not only did Super Chen's speed and strength not weaken in the slightest, they actually looked even stronger than before. Even though his spirit had been sealed, he was still able to display such a powerful explosive power. Zhu Hanyun looked at Super Chen's burning gaze incredulously, his face full of disbelief. Impossible. Everything is reasonable, nothing is impossible. Super Chen punched Zhu Hanyun's face fiercely. To everyone's surprise, the Titan art that Zhu Hanyun cultivated didn't seem to have any effect at that moment. With Super Chen's punch, Zhu Hanyun was directly sent flying like a kite with a broken string. He landed heavily on the ground, leaving only a shallow pit. What the hell is going on? On the side, Xia Ming was puzzled. Classmate Zhu Hanyun's Titan art has already reached a certain level, and he weighs several thousand jin. There's no way he could have been sent flying so easily. Everyone turned to look at Zhu Hanyun's little junior sister, Yan Xiaochun. Seeing her puckered little mouth and anxious expression, a lot of people realized that Super Chen might have accidentally broken some vital part of the Titan art. While a lot of people were guessing what on earth had happened, Wang Ling had already seen through the answer to the questionnaire. For a body technique cultivator, sealing a spirit actually didn't mean much, since martial body techniques relied more on one's qi or qigong. The reason why Zhu Hanyun paid so much attention to maintaining his spirit energy was largely because of the Titan art he cultivated. When he was full of spirit energy, Zhu Hanyun, who cultivated the Titan art, was like a balloon filled with air, his body brimming with tension. The density of his body would also increase with the technique, and he would look as indestructible and as heavy as Mount Tai. However, once his spirit energy was consumed, Zhu Hanyun's weight would also drop. This was like a balloon leaking air. The consequence of his weight loss was naturally that his body wouldn't be as dense as before. That was why Zhu Hanyun's body had been so easily shaken by Super Chen's punch. Under normal circumstances, an ordinary punch naturally wouldn't have been able to do this. Where does your strength come from? Zhu Hanyun crawled up from the ground, still trying hard to recover his spirit energy. At the same time, he was astonished by the strength of Super Chen's punch. Didn't I tell you? Your chaotic rain flow seems to have stimulated my body. I feel like all the cells in my body are boiling now, and there's a steady stream of energy pouring out. Super Chen looked even more excited. Zhu Hanyun's body swayed at these words. F***K, had he run into a legendary expert at running his mouth? Chapter 1204. The outcome of the duel was still a mystery, and Lotus Sun analyzed the situation. For every martial artist who cultivated diligently for many years, the cells in their bodies would evolve as their tendons and meridians were unblocked and their acupoints were activated. These evolved cells were called power cells. There were 80 trillion cells in an adult's body, and grandmasters who had been practicing the latest martial arts for many years would have a higher proportion of power cells in their bodies after continuous development. For example, at Master Li Xiaokai's level, power cells would take up at least half of his body. There were at least 40 trillion of them. These power cells could play the role of all the other cells, and had powerful regulatory and cleaning abilities that could kill all the bad cells in the body. Hero Guo rubbed his double chin. So, classmate Lotus Sun, what you mean is that Zhu Hanyun's chaotic rain flow activated Super Chen's acupoints just now, thereby stimulating his body to produce even more power cells. That's right. Lotus Sun nodded. But these power cells were only temporary. As long as they were cells, they would constantly die and be replaced by the body's metabolism, and even powerful power cells were no exception. Thus, in order to ensure that the number of power cells in their bodies wouldn't weaken, martial artists would repeatedly train a lot every day. That kind of suffering wasn't something an ordinary person could endure. Super Chen had been cultivating since he was a child, and had a certain amount of power cells in his body. In contrast, Zhu Hanyun, who had the Titan art, was the complete opposite of Super Chen. To put it bluntly, the Titan art itself relied heavily on spirit energy, which stimulated the meridians and acupoints in the body to achieve an effect similar to activating power cells. The downside was that once spirit energy disappeared, a person would be as fragile as a piece of paper. On the other side, Super Chen seized the opportunity. He had just activated his power cells, and facing Zhu Hanyun, whose spirit energy hadn't yet fully recovered, he stepped forward and gave him a good beating. Zhu Hanyun had been accumulating power for too long, and since the Titan art hadn't been activated yet, his defense was greatly weakened. In the end, he was finally unable to bear the burden, and the golden protective talisman on him lit up. The outcome of this duel was unexpected, but reasonable. There were two main reasons for Zhu Hanyun's failure. First, he had already used up a lot of his stamina and spirit energy before the 8th day, and second, he had been hesitant during the fight. Before the Titan art disappeared, He had poured all his strength into killing Super Chin, and wanted to hold back for the next round of the competition. In the end, it had the opposite effect. Not only had he not entered the next round, but Super Chin had seized the opportunity to be eliminated in one fell swoop. This battle is really exciting. Indeed, there's nothing to say about our Titan High's inferior skills. Number 60 High's younger generation is to be reckoned with. Super Chin will definitely have some achievements in physical skills in the future, and he might really become a grandmaster like Li Shaokai. As the headmaster of Titan High School, Lu Tian naturally felt humiliated when he saw his team leader lose the battle. But although she was angry, as a headmaster, Lu Tian couldn't directly show it. She could only comment on the match on the spot and praise Super Chin, which gave her the air of a great master. But as headmaster Lu Tian's classmate, number 60 High School's headmaster Chin knew all too well what kind of person this old guy was, and was probably already vomiting blood in his heart. The other headmasters around them weren't fools, and could naturally hear the hint of jealousy in headmaster Lu Tian's words. Comparing a foundation establishment student to the grandmaster Li Shaokai, wasn't this clearly showing that she wasn't in the right position? But while all the headmasters were well aware of this, they still smiled politely and echoed Lu Tian's sentiments one after another. After all, Titan High still had a chance. They still had a girl called Yen Xiaochun who hadn't been eliminated. During the intermission, the order of the draw was decided. The second round of the competition was between Yi Jiang and Lotus Sunday. There was no doubt that this was a battle of the spotlight. While both sides were preparing, relevant tactical discussions were underway. Although the 6 students up against number 60 High were from different schools, number 60 High was currently their common enemy. If they could get rid of Lotus Sun, their morale would definitely be greatly boosted. It was very likely that they would win consecutive matches and wipe out number 60 High in one fell swoop. I'm afraid that Lotus Sun is the strongest person on the other side. As long as we can get rid of her, I think we'll be able to win the next few rounds. Nan Yishio concluded. A large part of the reason why number 60 High's team had been able to maintain a high level of spirit and stamina until now was because of Lotus Sunday. As long as Lotus Sun wasn't eliminated, she could use her mysterious sea sword chi to help her team members recover some spirit power and stamina. A water sword spirit had a so-called healer halo, which could be used to assist in healing. So as long as they could get rid of the healer, number 60 High's most powerful fulcrum would instantly collapse. Now, everyone on Nan Yishio's side was pinning their hopes on Yi Jiang. Even before Yi Jiang went on stage, Nan Yishio organized the other 4 people, including himself, to instill some spirit power into Yi Jiang to ensure that he would have enough spirit power when he faced Lotus Sunday. After about 10 minutes of preparation, the second round of the spotlight match finally began. As the captain of Sword God Academy, Yi Jiang could already be called a dark horse in the competition. Lotus Sun, who was on the other side of the confrontation, was the center of attention. Student Lotus Sun, you can do it. Super Chin had just been injured, but he was now shouting louder than anyone else. Because just now, Lotus Sun had personally used her mysterious sea to heal some of his injuries. It was as if classmate Lotus Sun had personally caressed him, which instantly filled him with adrenaline. Don't worry, I'll definitely win this round. Lotus Sun's face beamed with a confident smile, and her school uniform skirt swayed slightly in the wind. On the other side, Yi Jiang coldly crossed his arms. His pure white school uniform made him look especially dazzling in the sunlight, like the son of the sun. Both sides were sword experts, and a lot of people were curious as to what kind of collision would occur. In the next moment, as Yi Jiang's aura surged, many people's expressions instantly changed. This is a sword spirit blessing. The corners of many people's eyes twitched as they looked incredulous. He was just at the foundation establishment stage, but he could actually become one with the sword. A lot of people couldn't believe their eyes. By becoming one with the sword, he could fuse with the spirit sword and slash out sword chi invisibly. Furthermore, this wasn't considered breaking the rules, because in theory, as long as a spirit sword magic treasure wasn't used, it would be a proper duel of body techniques. So you also know this move. Faced with Yi Jiang's aggressive aura, Lotus Sun naturally wasn't at a disadvantage. As a talented and beautiful girl, she had already mastered becoming one with the sword a long time ago. But she hadn't used it before, mainly because she felt a little ashamed. Because when she became one with the mysterious sea spirit sword, she would transform into a magical girl. Chapter 1205. Becoming one with the sword often depended on the characteristics of the sword spirit. Not all sword spirits would transform after fusing with the sword master. As a sword spirit whose true form was that of a cute girl, when the two girls fused together, they naturally had to consider the issue of clothing. Thus, when Lotus Sun also became one with the sword, her school uniform immediately transformed into a luxurious azure dress. For a moment, many people's pupils contracted. Who would have thought that Lotus Sun would really become a magical girl? After a few breaths, the duel officially began. The azure dress seemed to impede Lotus Sun's movements, but in fact, the girl's speed far exceeded everyone's imagination. Her azure dress was an outer garment formed from mysterious sea spirit power, and wasn't a real body. When necessary, it could actually turn into mist. As she leapt, her gorgeous dress left a brilliant ripple in the air as she threw a punch at Yi Jiang. But this was no ordinary fist technique. She had wrapped mysterious sea's sword intent around her fist. Thus, this punch was no longer a fist, but a sword. The attack range was actually much wider than it looked. Yi Jiang felt his internal organs tremble violently. After Lotus Sun and mysterious sea fused together, the aura of her attack was like a tsunami. The fact that a spirit sword could form a sword spirit proved that the bond between the sword master and the spirit sword had reached a certain level. A swordsman who had activated a sword spirit might not necessarily be an expert, but a swordsman who didn't even have a sword spirit could only be described as worrisome in terms of swordsmanship. The fact that Lotus Sun could activate a sword spirit at the foundation establishment stage was enough to prove her skill in swordsmanship. Thus, Yi Jiang knew from the beginning that she was an excellent opponent. But even so, he still hadn't expected her to be able to do this. In the face of Lotus Sun's punch, Yi Jiang didn't dodge. His expression was calm and composed, and his pure white school uniform reflected a brilliant light. The next moment, a resplendent phantom appeared behind him. This was the sword spirit of Yi Jiang's Liyang sword. It turned out to be a person of light whose face couldn't be seen clearly, and whose entire body shone with holy splendor. In a flash, everyone understood that this was a contest between water and fire. Yi Jiang summoned his own sword spirit, Yang Li. This was not a simple manifestation of the sword spirit, but a manifestation of sword will resonance. This was a whole new realm after becoming one with the sword. A simple one with the sword could only add the power of the sword spirit to one's body and enjoy the protection of the sword chi. On the other hand, those who resonated with the sword intent could freely use the sword chi, freely fusing it with every part of their body. Even if they plucked a strand of hair, they could turn it into an incomparably sharp weapon that could cut through iron like mud. When Yi Jiang completed the sword will resonance, the people around him were in an uproar. Even the principals in the command center could not sit still and stood up. Genius! A true genius. A principal couldn't help but sigh. The God of Sword Academy actually produced such a person. You can already resonate with sword intent at such a young age. The headmaster's shock was not without reason. Sword intent resonance was a very high realm in swordsmanship cultivation. Even a nascent soul cultivator might not be able to achieve this step, let alone a mere foundation establishment student. To be able to learn swordwell resonance at such a young age, there was no doubt that this Yi Jiang would become a master swordsman in the future. The headmasters didn't know about old Huang and President Qi's private discussion earlier. After seeing Yi Jiang display the power of swordwell resonance, everyone began to speculate about his true identity. It would be great if we could poach such a seedling. A principal sighed. You want to poach him? God of Sword Academy is a new school to begin with, and it doesn't have much of a reputation. If we can extend an olive branch, the other party might not reject it. In your dreams. Do you know who the person behind God of Sword Academy is? Someone in the know laughed bitterly. At this point, all the headmasters instantly fell silent. They were all smart people, and there were some things that could be said without going too far. In fact, after thinking about it carefully, all the headmasters knew how deep the water behind this was. God of Sword Academy was a new school that had been established for less than 5 years. In terms of seniority, such a school wouldn't even qualify for the national competition this time. So why had God of Sword Academy passed? This proved that there was probably a very powerful almighty standing behind the headmaster of God of Sword Academy. God of Sword. Sage of Sword. Yi Jiang, the familiar surname stunned many of the headmasters present. They all thought of one person at the same time. Could it be? Have you finally realized it? You're really slow. On the other side, Yi Jiang's attack was finally launched after the sword intent resonance. His entire body erupted with astonishing sword qi, which was mixed with the unique scorching aura of the Liyang sword. It was scorching and threatening. It collided with Lotus Sun's sword intent, which had fused into her jab, and scalding steam instantly rose from the two. Lotus Sun was indeed very strong. The moment the sword intent intertwined, Yi Jiang exclaimed in his heart. At the very least, this wasn't an opponent that he could defeat with one strike. Given Yi Jiang's understanding of the sword, he was now confident that he could defeat anyone below the Golden Core stage with one strike. But even though he exclaimed in his heart that Lotus Sun was very strong, Yi Jiang still hated the outcome of this match to the bone. Thus, during the collision, Yi Jiang folded his arms and said something very conceited that touched everyone's eardrums. Yi Jiang, Yi Jiang, am invincible below the Golden Core stage. Wang Ling, invincible below the Golden Core stage. Many people felt uncomfortable when they heard this, but they couldn't refute it. To be able to master the power of sword intent resonance at such a young age, it wasn't an exaggeration at all to say that he was invincible below the Golden Core stage. Classmate Sun, you're very strong, but not enough to deal with me. Yi Jiang had his arms crossed all this time as he maintained his lofty posture. As the sword intent collided, Yi Jiang just swept his gaze over her, and she immediately felt immense pressure. It was as if Apollo, the god of the sun, was driving a golden divine car at 280 kilometers per hour. Yi Jiang had actually separated a massive sword intent from his eyes. Not good. Lotus Sun frowned slightly. She couldn't choose to meet this powerful sword intent head-on, so she promptly separated a portion of Mysterious Sea's sword intent to block it, while her main body chose to withdraw and evade the attack. In the next moment, a shocking scene unfolded. Mysterious Sea's sword intent actually couldn't withstand Yang Li's ferocious attack at all, and in the collision, it actually shattered on the spot. When everyone came back to their senses, they saw a broken blue spirit sword at Lotus Sun's feet. All that was left of the sword was the hilt. A broken sword is a great taboo for a swordsman. Classmate Sun, it's time for you to admit defeat. Yi Jiang's lips curled as he looked at Lotus Sunday. Lotus Sun carefully picked up the fragments on the ground one by one and held them in her hands, her eyes filled with deep heartache. You've worked hard. Are you talking to your sword spirit? If the sword is broken, the sword spirit won't be able to live for long, Yi Jiang said. Thank you for the reminder, classmate Yi. This Mysterious Sea is indeed broken, but who told you? I only have one mysterious sea. As soon as she said this, the sword intent in Lotus Sun's body surged again, and the aura of the mysterious sea, which had originally been destroyed, was revived once more. Your mysterious sea, that's right, my mysterious sea isn't dead. I've never shown this to anyone before. Lotus Sun smiled slightly. The so-called mysterious sea doesn't just represent a spirit sword. It's actually a girl group. One just broke, and I still have 47. And each one has a sword spirit. Everyone. Chapter 1206. As Lotus Sun took out the second mysterious sea in front of everyone and once again performed the human sword unity technique, all the onlookers sucked in a breath of cold air. It seemed that this wasn't just a contest between water and fire, but also a contest between money. A headmaster in the command center was shocked by Lotus Sun's heroism. Is this a twin sword spirit? No, I'm guessing it's a twin sword spirit plus a clone sword spirit. Given Huagua Water Curtain Group's wealth, it shouldn't be difficult for them to entrust Spirit Sword Company to duplicate spirit swords and sword spirits. That is to say, of these 48 mysterious seas, Student Lotus Sun has 2 original spirit swords, and the other 46 are clones. Then it looks like this one is also a clone. That's right. Student Lotus Sun won't take out her original spirit swords lightly unless she has no other choice. Many headmasters could tell at a glance that the first and second mysterious seas that Lotus Sun had just taken out were both clones. Although the clone sword spirit was created based on the original spirit, there was in fact still a certain difference in their overall attributes, which was why the clone sword had broken so easily. The suspense in the second round of the duel was still unresolved. Yi Jiang's claim that he was invincible below the golden core stage sounded arrogant and conceited, but he indeed had the capital to brag. But Lotus Sun's battle strength wasn't weak below the golden core stage. It could be said that this was a contest between Sword God Academy's Yi Jiang and number 60 High School's Lotus Sun, which represented the top level of the current younger generation of cultivators. Many people did not expect such an exciting battle to take place. The principals in the command center all secretly regretted not starting a bet earlier. The purpose of starting a bet was not for money. The principals were betting on their ability to read people. If anyone could correctly guess the outcome of the battle, they would be able to use it as a topic of conversation in the future. Who do you think will win? At that moment, old Huang, who was sitting at the very front, chuckled. He could sense that the headmasters behind him couldn't take it anymore. But there were clear rules about starting a bet, and it actually wasn't allowed in terms of procedures and regulations. Thus, old Huang thought of an excuse. Anyone who guesses correctly will be rewarded. Old Huang's reward. At that moment, a number of headmasters had interested expressions on their faces. Everyone was well aware of old Huang's identity, so naturally, the reward he would give would not be an ordinary item. Some headmasters had heard that old Huang had refined many pills in the stalactite cave over the years, so they had even more expectations for this reward. If the prize was an elixir, then it would be a huge profit. Teacher, if I may be so bold as to ask, what is the reward? President Qi narrowed his eyes and smiled. A round thing, old Huang replied. After hearing old Huang's description, all the principals were even more certain that the prize was a pill. Hence, they began to express their opinions one after another. In order to make it easier for President Qi to tabulate the results, all the headmasters set up a group chat face-to-face and posted their views on the battle in text. Once the results were out, it would be clear who would get the prize. Yi Jiang has comprehended the sword will resonance at such a young age. This kid's swordsmanship is extraordinary. Moreover, when I watched him fight, he was neither arrogant nor rash. His thoughts were clear, and even his explosive power was extremely strong. If Student Lotus Sun hadn't sacrificed her spirit sword just now, I'm afraid she would have already triggered the golden light barrier. So what if you have explosive power? As the saying goes, a man can do it 9 times in one night. His explosive power is also very strong, but in the end, there's a limit to it. I don't believe that he can last so long with such explosive power. He was able to break one of student Lotus Sun's spirit swords, and she still has 47 of them. What are you going to use to fight her? I bet student Lotus Sun will win. On this side, the headmasters began to argue fiercely about the outcome of the second round of the duel. The heat on the real arena was even more intense than that of the headmasters in the command center. Zhu Hanyun was defeated. He sat cross-legged next to Super Chin, bruises all over his body. Although he looked badly injured, they were just superficial wounds. Earlier, the Special Forces teacher had wanted to take Zhu Hanyun away from the scene for treatment, but Nan Yishuo had politely refused. After Zhu Hanyun's repeated pleas, the command center finally agreed to let him stay on the scene. Of course, Zhu Hanyun couldn't cause trouble, or the consequences would be very serious. Zhu Hanyun had already thought it through. If he couldn't observe and learn from this pinnacle duel below the Golden Core stage, he would probably regret it for the rest of his life. Zhu Hanyun smiled and asked Super Chen next to him, "Who do you think will win?" "I'll always support student Lotus Sun." Super Chen's expression was very relaxed. "Can't you analyze it from your personal feelings?" "I think Yi Jiang will win." The corners of Zhu Hanyun's mouth twitched. He started to regret asking Super Chen this question. He then turned to look at Nan Yishuo next to him. "Brother Nan, what do you think?" There was clearly no point in asking the people from number 60 high in this situation. Even if they knew that Yi Jiang was very strong, they would still choose to support their captain. "I think Yi Jiang will win." Great minds think alike. Their gazes met, and Zhu Hanyun immediately analyzed the next match. "If Yi Jiang advances to the next round, there's a high chance that you'll fight him." "Ha, if I lose to Yi Jiang, I'll accept it wholeheartedly." Nan Yishuo smiled bitterly. On the side, Super Chen wasn't happy when he heard this. What did he mean by, "If Yi Jiang advances to the next round, there's a high chance that Nan Yishuo will fight him"? Wasn't that assuming that Wang Ling had already lost to Nan Yishuo? Thus, a lot of people from number 60 high cast disdainful looks at him. As the president of Wang Ling's fan club, Xia Ming was the first to step forward. "Student Nan Yishuo is a little overconfident. Why do you assume that student Wang Ling will lose to you?" Nan Yishuo chuckled. "To be honest, the gap in their battle strength is indeed very obvious." Super Chen also chuckled. "Then to be honest, the gap in luck is also very obvious. Our school's mascot lives up to his reputation. I don't think you'll win." These were sincere words from the bottom of Super Chen's heart, and didn't contain any utilitarian elements. For some reason, from the moment Nan Yishuo had drawn his match against Wang Ling, Super Chen had felt at ease. He felt that if it was Wang Ling, there might be a chance that he could win by a surprise move. Although, as Nan Yishuo said, there might really be a gap in their battle strength, Super Chen was willing to believe in Wang Ling. At this point in the argument, after Lotus Sun switched to a cloned spirit sword, the battle with Yi Jiang finally resumed. Since the other party could freely use sword intent in any part of his body, it was clear that he would be the one to suffer in a direct confrontation. At that moment, Lotus Sun changed her way of thinking. The girl was still dressed in a gorgeous azure blue dress. With a soft cry, she spread out her left hand, and another azure spirit sword appeared in her hand. This was the third mysterious C. She can even use 2 swords. On the other side of the battle, Yi Jiang's pupils contracted slightly. In his view, even if Lotus Sun used 2 swords, it wouldn't be of any use. One more sword meant one more sword to break. In Yi Jiang's eyes, this cloned mysterious sea was as brittle as a piece of ice. Chapter 1207. Yi Jiang crossed his arms, a proud and aloof expression in his eyes. The moment Lotus Sun stood still, an invisible wave spread out from Yi Jiang's body. When Lotus Sun slashed out with Mysterious Sea's sword Qi, she realized that it actually couldn't pierce the defense of this Qi membrane around Yi Jiang. The other party had actually used the power of the resonance of sword intent on his Qi, which he then used to build a barrier with himself as the center, forming a 3-foot sword intent barrier that was like a Qi membrane. This barrier was extremely tough, and could block almost all close-range and flying spells. If they were unable to break through this layer of sword intent barrier, then all of their attacks would be like ice crashing into a raging flame, completely melting away. The situation was unfavorable for Lotus Sunday. Even if she brandished her 2 swords and could control 2 Mysterious Seas at the same time, compared with Yang Li's ferocious attack, she was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Yi Jiang was indeed a very strong opponent. It had been a long time since Lotus Sun had encountered a strong enemy below the Golden Core stage. Although the situation looked difficult, the girl's expression from beginning to end didn't show the slightest hint of fear. She wasn't just the captain of No. 60 High's delegation, but also the future heir to Huaguo Water Curtain Group. Countless experts in the cultivation world were watching this match. If she lost this fight, it might affect the group's stock market to some extent. This was the so-called pressure of the rich. The school's honor and the family's honor, the double pressure now rested on Lotus Sun's shoulders. The next moment, she brandished the 2 swords in her hands and drew beautiful arcs in the air. For a moment, everyone's minds were in turmoil, and many of them realized for the first time that this girl actually had an outstanding foundation in martial arts. She brandished her swords like a graceful swan, or like she was dancing a noble waltz. Finally, as she spun rapidly, Mysterious Seas gave off the aura of the boundless ocean, and a waterspout infused with sword intent moved at high speed in Yi Jiang's direction. Countless gravel on the ground was sucked up by the waterspout, and the scene was like the descent of a disaster with earth-shattering momentum. Seeing this, Yi Jiang didn't hold back at all. With a backhand move and Yang Li's Apollo chariot, he didn't give Lotus Sun any chance at all. The golden flaming chariot faced the waterspout with the momentum of a tempestuous wave, and everyone around, including the headmasters, marveled at the sight. Even a battle between Golden Core cultivators might not be able to reach this level. It was hard to imagine that this was a duel between Foundation establishment cultivators. I'm afraid this is a fight between deities below the Golden Core stage. I already said that children nowadays are overnourished. They haven't even reached the Gold Core stage, yet they already have such psionic energy. Logically speaking, only cultivators above the Golden Core stage who possess sufficient spiritual energy can cast a level 3 spell. The 2 of them are actually using tier 3 spells to clash against each other. This is a little too ridiculous. A headmaster was astonished. Thinking back to the spiritual energy I possessed when I was in the building foundation stage, being able to release level 2 spiritual energy was already considered excellent. The children nowadays are too well nourished. It seems that the standards of the cult of future generations will have to be raised. The chariot collided with the waterspout, causing a huge explosion. The surrounding spectators were unlucky, and many of them were sent flying by the shock wave. They could only blame themselves for being too close. Although they wanted to save some spiritual power, they couldn't afford to set up a protective barrier at this moment. Tang Jingze, Hero Gua and Li Yuyue reacted quickly and used a protective barrier to withstand the impact. Yan Xiaochun used the innate advantage of the Titan art to stay where she was. Although she wasn't sent flying by the shock wave, she was only slightly injured because she was too close to the explosion. She was already very lucky that she hadn't triggered the protective golden light. The most unlucky one was Four Eyes from South Sea Sky. His reaction speed was too slow, and he was too close to the explosion. He hadn't been able to dodge in time, and had been forced to activate the protective golden talisman. I knew it was good to be classmate Wang Ling's fan. I didn't even have to do anything, and I already won. Xia Ming was very excited. Wang Ling, Xia Ming had already realized that Yi Jiang and Lotus Sun might make a big move in the second round of attacks, so he had kept a certain distance from them before they started fighting, so he hadn't been affected by any of the shockwaves. So to sum up, the most sullen people were still the two from South Sea Sky, Nan Ishio and Four Eyes. Although Four Eyes' strength was mediocre, he could still be considered a fighting force. This author hadn't even bothered to give him a name, and now he had actually become cannon fodder. Now, Nan Ishio was even more stressed. But Nan Ishio was still confident that he could defeat Wang Ling. As for Wang Ling, while everyone was quickly reacting to the explosion in front of them, Wang Ling's idea was to take advantage of the shockwaves from the explosion to trigger the protective golden talisman and withdraw from this boring match as soon as possible. Thus, Wang Ling stood motionless on the spot. As long as he could trigger the protective golden talisman, he would be able to rest early and eat crispy noodle snacks. While this was a good plan, it couldn't stop Lotus Sun from actually paying attention to Wang Ling while fighting Yi Jiang. Seeing that Wang Ling was about to be hit by the shockwaves, Lotus Sun made a prompt decision to throw out another clone Mysterious Sea to help Wang Ling withstand the shockwaves. After that, Lotus Sun was actually a little embarrassed. Classmate Wang Ling. You don't have to thank me. It was the captain's responsibility to protect his team members. Wang Ling, under everyone's horrified gazes, this chariot versus waterspout drama finally ended in a draw. Lotus Sun had sacrificed a second clone Mysterious Sea, but her expression didn't change at all. The sword spirits of the clone swords were actually emotionless artificial machines. Apart from obeying Lotus Sun's orders, they didn't have any extra emotions. The ones who truly had feelings for Lotus Sun were the twin sword spirits of the original body. But given the current situation, Lotus Sun still didn't seem to have any intention of releasing her true dual sacred sword spirits. Unless the cloned swords were completely used up, the twin sword spirits wouldn't go into battle so easily. Yi Jiang naturally noticed this. Classmate Lotus Sun, your cloned swords are the most powerful I've ever seen. But you have to understand that the power of the cloned swords is limited. Your level 3 spell is very powerful, but without the support of the twin sword spirits, there's no way you can fight me. At this point in the battle, Yi Jiang felt that the girl in front of him still hadn't realized the gap between their battle strengths, and he felt that he could already unleash more power. His foster father and Shifu had previously told him that it was best not to use this move unless it was absolutely necessary, otherwise it would be easy to expose certain things. But now, with so many people watching the match, Yi Jiang already felt that he couldn't care less. He enjoyed the shocked and adoring gazes of the people around him, and the atmosphere of this showdown between the strongest cultivators below the Golden Core stage. In the next moment, Yi Jiang's aura surged again, and strands of golden red sword chi began to boil on the surface of his body. Even his hair was dyed a dazzling gold like the sun. This person had actually even mastered General Yi's boundless sword Dao. At that moment, Wang Ling's eyebrows finally twitched slightly. He finally understood why Yi Jiang was confident that he was invincible below the Golden Core stage. With the boundless sword Dao, a secret technique that shouldn't be mastered by a Foundation establishment cultivator, Yi Jiang could naturally call himself invincible. But this also meant that Lotus Sun was in danger. Wang Ling had personally experienced the power of the boundless sword Dao when he had watched General Yi and the head of state face off. Given the power of that sword chi, Lotus Sun might be seriously injured even with the protective golden light. Looking at the scene in front of him, Wang Ling sighed inwardly. He hadn't wanted to make a move. But now, it seemed that he needed to help Lotus Sun in secret. The appearance of the boundless sword Dao had already broken the balance a little. As an expert in the field of checks and balances and a master of average scores, the moment Wang Ling saw this scene, he was already thinking of ways to help Lotus Sunday. Chapter 1208. The moment Yi Jiang unleashed boundless sword Dao, the hearts of Lotus Sun supporters turned cold. Many headmasters rubbed their eyes to make sure they weren't seeing things. A Foundation establishment kid had actually learned Blademaster's boundless sword Dao. No wonder he could become General Yi's adopted son. This kind of swordsmanship talent was truly rare in the world. I'm afraid student Lotus Sun is going to lose. Looking at the scene in front of them, several headmasters immediately felt that the outcome was a foregone conclusion. Boundless sword Dao was a technique that could infinitely activate a swordsman's limitless potential. Even though Yi Jiang had only cultivated it to a rudimentary level, it was still frightening. His surging sword chi and surging aura had the power of empty crushing down on them, and when it erupted, several people were instantly forced to activate their protective golden talismans. Super Chen, who had already been injured, was affected and directly eliminated. On the other side, the girl duo, Yan Xiaochun and Li Yuyue, were even worse off. They had clearly kept their distance from the battlefield, but were still affected by the impact and had been forced to activate their golden talismans. How could this be? Seeing his only remaining junior sister eliminated, Zhu Hanyun almost fainted on the spot. With the support of boundless sword Dao, the power of the resonance of sword intent was further amplified. In other words, at that moment, the sword chi around Yi Jiang had also greatly increased. The sword barrier that had originally been only a few feet wide had expanded to dozens of feet, and he was now able to launch an indiscriminate attack on the spot. Fortunately, Lotus Sun reacted quickly and sacrificed 3 clone swords to protect the 3 boys closest to her. Li Yuyue was the only one she couldn't protect, because she was too far away and Lotus Sun didn't have time to sacrifice her swords to protect herself. As for Nan Yixio and Tang Jingze, they reacted quickly and were very smart. When they saw that something was wrong, they immediately used their homemade levitation talismans to save their lives. The fluctuations of sword chi were certainly frightening, but in the end, they were affecting the ground. As long as they kept a certain distance from the ground, they could avoid the impact of the shock wave. Nan Yixio still remembered his duel with Wang Ling. It was just a mere levitation talisman. If he used it, then so be it. When the time came, as long as he beat Wang Ling, even if he couldn't beat Yi Jiang, he could at least win second place for South Sea Sky High School. Student Lotus Sun has already used up 5 clone swords. Tang Jingze's expression was calm as he sighed in his heart at Huaguo Water Curtain Group's financial resources. AI, classmate Wang Ling really has a good life. But so what? You'll still lose to me in the end. Although the consumption of the cloned sword seemed easy, in reality, the value of each cloned sword was extremely high. Sacrificing her sword to protect her teammate was enough to prove her determination in the competition. Therefore, even though the outcome of this battle seemed to have been decided in the eyes of the outside world, in Tang Jingze's eyes, it was still hard to say who would win or lose. The most important reason was, although Yi Jiang had used the amplification power of his boundless sword Dao to eliminate a few people, in the end, it was still Lotus Sun who was fighting him. At such a close distance, Lotus Sun had only used her sword to protect her teammates, but hadn't used the cloned sword on herself. In other words, Lotus Sun had withstood the pressure of the sword chi. Why did this happen? For a moment, many people fell into deep thought. In the end, it was because of the nature of the sword spirits. It was true that Yi Jiang's Liang's sword intent was fierce, but Lotus Sun's mysterious sea was a gentle water sword spirit. It had the power to move 1,000 caddies with little effort. When her fist struck the surface of the water, it might cause ripples, but it might not be able to harm the water. After becoming one with the sword, Mysterious Sea had attached itself to the girl's body, and the azure dress it had transformed into was the best protective halo. Lotus Sun's slender body swayed slightly. Although Yi Jiang's sword intent hadn't triggered her protective golden talisman, it had still caused her internal injuries. The girl raised her hand to wipe the blood from the corner of her mouth, her expression full of joy. A showdown between geniuses was bound to be one in which heroes appreciated each other, especially when neither side was willing to admit defeat, which made the match even more interesting to watch. Under countless gazes, Lotus Sun took a deep breath. She then unfurled her sleeves, and one clone Mysterious Sea after another was taken out of her sword spirit space. When the remaining 40 clone Mysterious Sea hovered around Lotus Sun, everyone suddenly understood her strategy. Since quality couldn't be guaranteed, then she would use quantity to win. This was undoubtedly a huge gamble. However, everyone was still skeptical about whether the girl had the ability to manipulate 40 spirit swords at the same time. Wang Ling was watching in the dark. If he was going to make a move, he couldn't make it too obvious. The boundless sword Dao was too strong. Given the gap in their battle strength, if he helped Lotus Sun turn the situation around, she would definitely be questioned. What he needed to do was to adapt to the situation, wait for the right opportunity, and then operate under the table. While protecting Lotus Sun, he would do his best to ensure that the two of them fought to a draw. This was the best of both worlds he could think of. Just manipulating 40 spirit swords would consume a huge amount of spirit energy and mental strength. Wang Ling could already see that Lotus Sun's forehead was steaming, which was a sign that her mental strength was too concentrated. It was like the overheating effect of a computer running multiple programs at the same time. Once it reached a state where it couldn't bear the load, it was bound to lag. That would be the time for Yi Jiang to subdue the enemy. Hence, a lot of people had been skeptical about whether Lotus Sun could truly control the swords at the start. But reality proved that a genius's ability to control them was beyond everyone's imagination. In the next moment, the 40-clone Mysterious Sea turned into a meteor shower of swords that soared into the sky, dragging brilliant rainbows behind them. In the air, they arranged themselves in a sword array according to Lotus Sun's will, constantly changing positions as they bombarded Yi Jiang with overwhelming force. Yi Jiang's arms were crossed the whole time, and he maintained a cold and aloof posture. The Yangli sword spirit behind him emitted a holy light like that of the bright sun, which scorched the surrounding air. The rising temperature made everyone nearby feel like the air was boiling hot. The heat could be felt from a long distance away, and the temperature at the center was absolutely frighteningly high. "Is he trying to raise the temperature to melt those clone Mysterious Sea swords?" someone said. While the temperature at the center was extremely high, it was still a fool's dream to think that he could melt the clone swords. Yi Jiang was like a small sun, but he was never able to reach the temperature of a true sun. So the other party's real goal definitely wasn't to melt the Mysterious Sea swords, but to make Lotus Sun overload herself in advance. In order to manipulate the 40 spirit swords, Lotus Sun's body temperature had already risen. As long as Yi Jiang added a little more firewood, she would definitely overload herself. Although such a method was shameless, it could still be regarded as a safe strategy and tactic. It was impossible for Lotus Sun not to see through this crafty plan. She knew that she couldn't drag it out any longer. This wave of 40 Mysterious Sea swords was her final all-out attack. 5-card stud. In the end, such a desperate effort would naturally result in both sides suffering. And it was very obvious that Lotus Sun's injuries would be even more serious. When Wang Ling made a battle simulation based on the scene in front of him, he could already see the result. This couldn't go on. And so, the moment Lotus Sun's 40-clone Mysterious Sea swords were about to collide with Yi Jiang, he switched to his king's eye. In the space of a single breath, time and the entire universe paused for a brief moment. During this pause, he did 3 things. The first was to use a cooling spell to cool down Lotus Sun's body. The second was to adjust the positions of the 40-clone Mysterious Sea swords. The third was to aim some of the swords at Yi Jiang's, but this sword chi barrier seemed flawless, but in fact, it also had a weak point. And Yi Jiang's weak point was this tailbone. Chapter 1209. Wang Ling didn't use the universal time stop ability very often. He had comprehended this ability when he was 12 years old. The reason he didn't use it often was that it was a huge burden on the king's eye. The main damage was temporary dryness of the eyes, which required several drops of eye drops to recover. The key was that after using it, there would also be some problems with his vision. Time would pause for 1 second, and the degree would temporarily increase by 10 degrees. Thus, he would do his best to finish what he had to do while time was paused. After everything was set up, he withdrew his time stop power. Victory or defeat in a battle often depended on the details. When the wheel of time started to roll again, there was a clear look of astonishment on Yi Jiang's face. When on Earth? He could already feel 4 clone mysterious Cs aimed at his butt. They clearly hadn't been there before. He didn't know when they had suddenly appeared behind him. His tailbone was his life gate, and his butt was the weakest part of the sword chi barrier. He hadn't expected Lotus Sun to be able to do this in such a tense moment. Not only had she seen through his life gate, she had even launched an extremely precise attack. The distance was too short, and it was already too late to rebuild his defense. At the last moment, as the 4 clone mysterious Cs pierced through his rear defense, Yi Jiang's life gate was broken. Like a broken balloon, the sword chi all over his body poured out in torrents with the momentum of a landslide and a tsunami. For a moment, it formed a terrifying wave of sword intent that broke the dam in all directions. Seeing that the situation wasn't good, Lotus Sun had the rest of the clone mysterious Cs protect all the members of number 60 high school, while she alone took the lead. But the power of the wave of sword intent was too strong, and her clone mysterious Cs shattered like dominoes. When the last clone mysterious C shattered, Lotus Sun's entire body was sent flying by the wave of sword intent. Almost at the same time, Yi Jiang and Lotus Sun's protective golden talismans were triggered, and they perished together. It's actually a draw. A lot of people looked at this scene in disbelief. All the headmasters in the command center were deathly silent. Yi Jiang had already used a killer move like Boundless Sword Dao, but he had still managed to tie with Lotus Sunday. The headmasters who had been on Yi Jiang's side earlier all lowered their heads and fell silent. This was indeed a showdown at the peak of the Golden Core stage, and Yi Jiang was terrifyingly strong. When the Limitless Sword Dao was activated, he could even fight against a Golden Core cultivator. And Lotus Sun's strategic planning and insight were even more astonishing. Even when she was at a disadvantage, she could still accurately find an opportunity to reverse the situation. Although the final result was a draw, in fact, in the eyes of many principals present, the winner was very obvious. After being sent flying, Lotus Sun fell into a coma. The protective golden talisman would only automatically activate when a person's life was in danger. Just now, the girl had shielded the front on her own to protect the other people from number 60 high, and had relied on the remaining mysterious cloning C to disperse the enormous pressure brought on by the tide of sword intent. However, in the end, he still failed to protect his golden protective talisman. After secretly examining Lotus Sun, Wang Ling heaved a secret sigh of relief. Although he had fallen into a coma, his injuries were not serious. He had only suffered some minor internal injuries. On the other hand, Yi Jiang was the one who really needed to be concerned about. If Lotus Sun had been standing on the edge of the storm of surging sword intent just now, then Yi Jiang was the person at the center of the storm. A large amount of sword intent had poured out of his tailbone, causing his protective golden talisman to activate, and he had fallen to the ground with his butt sticking up in the air. His posture was too graceful, and the scene was a mess. Compared with the girl who had fallen like a water lily, Yi Jiang on the other side was more like a chrysanthemum in full bloom. Your chrysanthemum is broken, the ground is covered in wounds, your smile is already yellow. Hero Guo couldn't help sighing. This was the worst draw he had ever seen. It was clearly a draw, but it looked like Lotus Sun had won a complete victory. The way she had fallen was too different. Furthermore, Yi Jiang's current situation was the kind that couldn't be broadcasted without mosaics. Members of the resident special forces quickly rushed over to check on Yi Jiang's initial injuries. They saw his snow white butt sticking up in the air and half his head buried in the ground. The rescue team first exposed Yi Jiang's face, but didn't move him from his embarrassing position, because they weren't sure if Yi Jiang's bones were fractured. If there were internal fractures, casually turning him over at this time could cause him a second injury. Has the scene been cut off? It has. That's too pitiful, it's clearly a draw. Stop talking, let's examine him first. The team members used their magic treasures to conduct a comprehensive appraisal and examination of Yi Jiang's injuries. His upper body is basically fine, but his lower body is a little tragic. His pelvis and leg bones are fractured. Also, his anus is ruptured. The rescue team member spoke very quietly, but Super Chin still heard him. Standing on the side, Super Chin smiled. Oh, it's ruptured. Then why isn't there any blood? As soon as he said this, blood sprayed out of Yi Jiang's butt like a fountain. Seeing this, the rescue team member sighed in his heart. When a landslide happened, no blood was innocent. Roughly 10 minutes later, the scene returned to normal, and Yi Jiang and Lotus Sun were both picked up by members of the special forces. Thus, only Tang Jingze, Hero Guo, Nan Yixuo, and Wang Ling were left. Lotus Sun was number 60 high school's biggest backer. Being eliminated along with Yi Jiang was the most ideal result that Nan Yixuo could think of. In terms of overall combat strength, Nan Yixuo was absolutely confident that he could win against the remaining 3 people. After all, he was the captain of South Sea Sky High. The only one who might be a little harder to deal with was number 59 high school's Tang Jingze, but so what? That Hero Guo wasn't a pushover. After the fight between Tang Jingze and Hero Guo, no matter who won, the winner would definitely suffer losses. But his fight with Wang Ling would be effortless. Thus, before the third round of the match began, Nan Yixuo looked at Wang Ling as if victory was already in his grasp. Classmate Wang Ling, it's our turn in the next round. Do you have anything to say? Wang Ling, preparation time passed quickly, and the duel between Nan Yixuo and Wang Ling officially began. After the third round of immortals fighting below the Golden Core stage, this duel seemed a little dull. South Sea Sky High was a school famous for its perception-type magic, so no one expected Nan Yixuo to be able to show off in battle. As for Wang Ling on the other side, he was just a mascot, and there didn't seem to be much to talk about. Thus, despite everyone's pessimism, Wang Ling calmly put his hands in the pockets of his school pants and unhurriedly walked onto the duel stage. He was pondering a very serious question. What kind of spell could he use to not kill Nan Yixuo and still win this match in a low-key manner? Chapter 12:10. Nan Yixuo's failure was unexpected, but reasonable. When they saw the mushroom cloud explode, all the headmasters in the command center couldn't help looking at number 60 High's spicy man. From the very beginning, this headmaster Chin from number 60 High School had already made clear plans for Nan Yixuo. Thank you, everyone. Huaguo Water Curtain Group had already invested in the construction of our school's playground, and construction would start in the near future. So, let's take a discount. I hope that everyone who has just made a promise will not go back on their word. Headmaster Chin smiled lightly. Although he was looked down upon by the surrounding headmasters, he was undoubtedly the biggest winner in this situation. He did not want Bai Lian. The headmasters were furious, but they didn't dare say anything. The most important thing was that Old Huang and President Qi were present as witnesses, so they had no choice but to fulfill their promise back then. Since he had lost, there was no harm in being more magnanimous. Otherwise, he would be labeled as someone who did not keep his word. As for the reward that Old Huang had mentioned earlier, that round object piqued the curiosity of many people. Do you still remember Old Huang's promise? Headmaster Chen didn't stand on ceremony. Yes, I still have that round thing with me. Under everyone's curious gaze, old Huang took out a shiny object and tossed it to Headmaster Chin. Coins. An ancient coin. I found it while I was cultivating in the stalactite cave. What history? Someone asked. I'm not sure. Old Huang shook his head. What does that imply? Go to Bilibili and pay for the Immortal King anime. On the other side of the scene, Nanisho walked out of the dust caused by the explosion. He was covered in dust and dirt. The explosion of the talisman was just right. The light film triggered by the protective golden light protected his body very well. He didn't lose an arm or leg. However, the outcome was hard for Nanisho to accept. He couldn't believe that he had lost to a mascot. Obviously, he hadn't even exchanged one move with Wang Ling, and he had already lost just like that. At this point, number 60 High's victory seemed certain. Number 60 High still had Hero Guo, Wang Ling and Xiaoming on the field. On the other side, only number 59 High School's Tang Jingze was left. Unless Tang Jingze could mount a counterattack and achieve a 1-on-3, number 60 High's victory was already set in stone. 1 against 3, how could it be easy? Even if he could win one round, Tang Jingze wouldn't be able to endure the physical exhaustion of taking turns to fight. Just as Hero Guo was warming up and planning to fight Tang Jingze, he heard Tang Jingze say, "Well, I admit defeat. Number 60 High won this match." Right now, it was a meaningless battle. Tang Jingze felt that even if he fought, he might not be able to win. He might as well save some strength and pick up second place. This choice might seem a little cowardly, but it was in fact a wise one. The main thing was that number 59 High School's team was in a more desperate situation. As the team leader, if Tang Jingze was injured at this time, everyone in number 59 High School would have to be carried back. You're giving up. Hero Guo couldn't believe that Tang Jingze would actually make such a decision. This is my decision. And the truth was that even if I won the next 3 matches, my overall score might not be higher than number 60 High's. Otherwise, I would definitely give it my all. Tang Jingze's voice was very heavy. He also wanted to finish the last match, but the situation in front of him was that he would lose sooner or later. Number 59 High School's overall score wasn't high to begin with. Even if they won 3 matches, there would still be a gap between them and number 60 High School. The nature of the national competition was based on a point system. Those who survived to the end would get bonus points, but they might not necessarily be the winner. If their overall score in the first few days was high enough, it was still possible for them to turn defeat into victory. How do you know your overall score isn't as high as ours? Hero Guo was stunned. I caught a teacher from the Special Forces on patrol earlier and asked him about the situation in each team. Tang Jingze sighed as he spoke. Your number 60 High School's overall score is very high. Just the bonus points for the essay alone are over 300 points. Bonus points for the essay? Hero Guo was stunned. It's the diary for the body technique competition. Everyone can decide whether or not they want to write the essay on the topic. Student Wang Ling's essay called Substitute got more than 200 points. After Tang Jingze said this, everyone present, including Wang Ling and all the headmasters in the command center, were shocked. All of them had incredulous expressions on their faces. The hell? More than 200 points for an essay. What the F*** K was there left to play? The main reason why Wang Ling was astonished was because he hadn't written the essay at all. He had been fighting with Wang Ying while he had been writing the essay. So this essay had been written by his clone, Crispy Noodles. Although Wang Ling had known early on that Crispy Noodles was an honest person, he had never thought that he would actually be able to write an essay with more than 200 points. At that moment, Wang Ling sucked in a cold breath. He felt more and more gazes focus on him, and cold sweat instantly soaked his back. Thus, only Tang Jingze was left sighing. As a new fan of Wang Ling, his admiration for Wang Ling at that moment was even greater than before he had participated in the competition. Tang Jingze, student Wang Ling, as expected of you. You got first place with your essay. Wang Ling, on the other side, the headmasters in the command center were having none of it. More than 200 points for an essay. What kind of essay could be so attractive? Shady. Blatant shady business. I strongly demand that this essay be made public for everyone to appreciate. Many headmasters openly protested. Calm down, everyone, I've already ordered for the essays to be shown. All the essays written by the students during the competition have been cross-evaluated and graded by gold medal Chinese teachers selected from the National Database of Outstanding Teachers. The system will randomly select the teachers, so it stands to reason that there shouldn't be any shady business, President Xi said. Dozens of seconds later, Wang Ling's substitute essay written by Crispy Noodles was publicly displayed on the screen in the background library. What greeted their eyes was a large number of wavy underlined lines that the Chinese teacher had helped to annotate. All the headmasters were utterly shocked. The entire essay was actually full of golden lines. When a speck of dust falls on a man's head, it becomes a mountain. Nature's warning is clearly deafening, but we pretend to be deaf and dumb, go with the flow, and even add fuel to the fire. We think we dominate the world and can be the masters, but we don't know who has become whose substitute. You can't sing winter as the beginning of spring. Some people are already buried in winter, and some people should be buried in winter. Seeing this, all the headmasters were stupefied. They were stunned by Wang Ling's outstanding writing style and the profound philosophical meaning behind his words. Although some of them didn't understand the deeper meaning expressed inside, they felt that it was very impressive. P.S. This chapter is free to read. 3 of the 4 sentences at the end are quotes from a Chinese teacher's opening speech at Chengdu No. 7 High School. Article: This screen may change fate. Chapter 12:11. On Sunday, November 22nd, the 9th day of the National Cultivation School Body Technique Competition, students from hundreds of schools all over the country gathered in neat square formations in the square of 9 Dragon Mountain Base. It could be seen that compared to the beginning, the delegations sent by each school were basically fewer people. Some students who suffered from fractures or other more serious injuries during the competition could be exempted from participating in the closing ceremony after being reported by the teacher leading the team. Yi Jiang and Lotus Sun hadn't come. In fact, Lotus Sun had already woken up earlier, but that old man's son from Huaguo Water Curtain Group had been worried, and had taken her back overnight for a more detailed examination. All in all, this national body technique competition finally drew to a close with No. 60 High's one-sided team performance. A lot of people sighed in their hearts at the dramatic nature of the competition. At the same time, a lot of people had pent-up resentment in their hearts. Before the competition had started, no one had thought that No. 60 High would end up with a big lead over the other teams in the form of bonus points for essays. What happened to the body technique exchange competition? Wang Ling thought of the spirit sword competition with No. 59 High School. They hadn't had many opportunities to display their spirit swords at all, and no one had expected the same mistake to repeat itself in the national body technique competition this time. As expected, life was a circle. But it wasn't as if there hadn't been any exciting fights in the competition. For example, the showdown between Yi Jiang and Lotus Sun at the peak of the Golden Course stage could be taken out and scrutinized again and again. On the sports field, Wang Ling looked around out of the corner of his eye and noticed that a lot of people were watching him. He knew in his heart that the reason he was the focus of so much attention wasn't because of his battle with Nan Yishuo, but because of the essay written by his real clone, Crispy Noodles, after the competition which had made him popular. Who knew things would turn out like this? Wang Ling sighed helplessly. On the way back to Songhai City on the air Immortal Worship, Wang Ling was worried about one thing, and that was whether Father Wang would find an excuse to dock his allowance. He had stirred up too much trouble in this national competition, and now the whole school, no, the whole alliance of 10,000 schools knew that he was a good writer. Fortunately, Audrey knew that Wang Ling had always liked to keep a low profile and didn't like to draw attention to himself. Thus, Audrey had already spread the word that Wang Ling's composition this time was just a flash in the pan. When it came to writing an essay, even if there were no mistakes in the choice of words and sentences, it was still largely dependent on inspiration and luck. A person could not guarantee that he would always be able to write a golden sentence. Sometimes, when he suddenly thought of an awesome sentence, it was really just a sudden burst of inspiration. But he didn't know how many people would accept this. In any case, on the way back, everyone on the air Immortal Warship was filled with admiration for Wang Ling, especially Tang Jingze, who could almost be described as prostrating himself on the ground. Classmate Wang Ling, your composition is amazing. He's practically a modern-day Lu Shuren. Tang Jingze savored the sentences in the essay. What he liked the most was that sentence, a speck of dust from an era, when it falls on a person's head, is like a mountain. What kind of literary talent did he have to write such a great sentence? Incredible, incredible. No one was more excited than Wang Ling's language teacher, Guan Ziqian. Teacher Guan was a very low-key person, and usually didn't show his face. He was a very low-key office worker, and of course, there was nothing to say about his professional ability. All along, Guan Ziqian had been quite critical of Wang Ling's essays. It wasn't that Wang Ling's writing wasn't good, but that it was too plain. It was like a running account, and even the arguments were very old-fashioned. Wang Ling's essay could barely be considered above a passing grade, but this kind of essay would never get a high score. Thus, when this essay called Substitute was exposed in the national competition, Teacher Guan, who usually didn't say much in the group, actually directly at Wang Ling, have you finally figured it out? Teacher Guan sent a facepalm emoji. Why do I feel like your essay is ghostwritten? Looking at Teacher Guan's question in the class group, Wang Ling thought about it for a long time before he trembled and replied with 2 words, no. To be honest, when he typed these 2 words on the screen, Wang Ling felt guilty. Seeing his reply, Teacher Guan didn't stand on ceremony, and directly retorted in the group. Then what's with your usual essays? Are you playing me? He hit the nail on the head. Wang Ling was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. Fortunately, Old Antique came out in time to smooth things over for Wang Ling. Student Wang Ling belongs to the category of contestants who occasionally perform well in competitions. Teacher Guan, don't be so calculative. Seeing Wang Ling's pitiful appearance as he held his phone, Old Antique's heart ached a little. Look at how scared this child is. Naturally, Teacher Guan was joking. His students had written such an excellent essay in a national competition, and he was very happy in his heart. He didn't type anymore, and directly praised Wang Ling in the group by voice message. Wang Ling, this is enough to show that you actually have literary talent and potential. I suspect that you were too nervous when you wrote your essay before because you didn't have enough time. If you were given enough time, even if you didn't perform as well as you did this time, you would at least be above average or even above average. Wang Ling still didn't have the guts to reply. The reason was that he felt that Teacher Guan was implying something. Sure enough, Teacher Guan's next words were, Wang Ling, there's a district essay competition in the middle of next month. Our language team teachers have been discussing for a long time who our school should send. How about you? Wang Ling, ? Teacher Guan, this time, it was all thanks to your essay that our school won the national competition. I don't think the other language team teachers have any objections. People are forced to be like this. Since you have potential, you should give yourself the right amount of pressure, understand? I'm doing this for your own good. Wang Ling, he knew things would turn out like this. It was already afternoon by the time he returned to number 60 High Sports Field on the Sky Immortal Warship. Wang Ling was about to go home when he heard someone shouting on the road, "A speck of ashes of the times. A speck of ashes of the times." Wang Ling turned his head, and unexpectedly saw a passerby looking at him in high spirits. It was a middle-aged woman who was taking her daughter home from school. Judging from the girl's clothes, she was probably from Qingyun First Primary School, which was a cultivation primary school near number 60 high. "Do you see that, big brother? A speck of ashes of the times." The middle-aged woman crouched down and said excitedly to her daughter. She had forgotten what Wang Ling's name was, but had still given him a unique nickname based on his essay. That was, "A speck of ashes of the times." You have to learn from that big brother, his essays are very good. The middle-aged woman was very excited. "Mom! That big brother is eating crispy noodle snacks." The little girl pointed at Wang Ling. "Let's go. Let's go buy it too. Eat it. Maybe your dog's hit essay will be as good as his." The middle-aged woman was even more excited. The corner of Wang Ling's mouth twitched. It looked like he was really famous this time. Even his noodles were starting to be snatched away. Chapter 12:12. Tomorrow was Monday, but Wang Ling didn't have to go to school. Headmaster Chen had taken into account the delegation's circumstances, and had given it 2 days off. After all, they had won glory for the school. Some of them hadn't fully recovered yet, and if they returned to school seamlessly, it would only cause more pressure. So on Monday and Tuesday, as long as they were members of number 60 High's delegation, they could complete their homework at home. The teachers would record the class videos and send them to the class group chat for the students to study at home. Contrary to Wang Ling's expectations, when he got home, Father Wang didn't scold him for the composition, but instead smiled. Wang Ling wasn't used to this. "What are you afraid of? Sit down, I won't cut your pocket money." Father Wang patted the empty seat next to the sofa. "Your composition is pretty good." He then started to praise Wang Ling. "This shows that you still have our old Wang family's genes." "Wang Ling, don't worry, I won't blame you. It's fine if you stand out. When it comes to composition, sometimes inspiration just flashes in the pan, and I'm afraid you can't control that well." Father Wang stared at Wang Ling and sked, then reached out to stroke his shoulder. "Through this competition, I've gotten to know you better, son." Wang Ling still didn't dare speak, mainly because he felt that Father Wang's words seemed to have a deeper meaning. "In the future, you can also learn to inherit my mantle. If you're not busy, why don't you help me write? I'll give you 10% of my royalties. Even 10% of my royalties is more than your pocket money." Wang Ling hadn't expected Father Wang to make such a request. Wasn't this just asking for a steal? Furthermore, everyone had their own specialties, and he really hadn't thought about writing a book. After staring blankly for a moment, Father Wang laughed and rubbed Wang Ling's head. "I'm joking, I was just testing you. I still have this bit of professional integrity. Your writing skills are just like writing for an exam, your father doesn't care about that." Wang Ling sighed in his heart again. Being teased outside and teased by his father at home, he really couldn't live like this. After dinner, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Wang Ling spoke on the phone, mainly to talk about settling Li Huanran and Jiang Yingyue. Li Huanran would participate in the public hearing as the main witness of this incident. On the other hand, Jiang Yingyue had some clues about the fake numinous mother, so she also had some value. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal actually wasn't calling Wang Ling, but Loopy Toad. "Brother Ling, this is the current situation. Battle Sect had to help Huaxiao Alliance deal with the aftermath, and couldn't spare any manpower for the time being. Huaxiao Alliance thinks that we need to find the right person to keep an eye on these two. Nothing will happen to Li Huanran, but it's mainly this Jiang Yingyue. It wouldn't be good if something happens to her," Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said. The battle sect he mentioned was actually the Office of Strategic Deception. This was a new alias that the Office of Strategic Deception had recently established, which was convenient and more domineering. At the present busy stage, who would watch over Jiang Yingyu seemed to be a problem. Thus, grenade-throwing senior immortal's idea was to have Li Huanran and Jiang Yingyu live in Wei Ji's house. Wang Ling broke out in a sweat when he heard this. Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi were already living in Wei Ji's house. If two more people, a man and a woman at that, were they going to shoot a romantic comedy? But this wasn't an impossible suggestion. First of all, Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi were on Wang Ling's side. Their main job was to look after the spirit beasts in Wei Ji's villa. After Li Huanran and Jiang Yingyu moved in, not only would they have a place to stay temporarily, the most important thing was that there would be someone to watch over them. Lu Qingyi was a very meticulous person. As long as she was around, it was unlikely that Jiang Yingyu would cause any trouble. In addition, the director of the apartment's neighborhood committee was Battle Saint Marshal Jiang, one of the 10 founding generals, who had retired. With Battle Saint around, Jiang Yingyu probably wouldn't dare move a muscle, which would be more effective than sending her to prison. So, this was indeed a feasible plan. Furthermore, Wei Ji's apartment was big enough to house more than a dozen spirit beasts, let alone 2 more people. But in the end, this still required Wei Ji's approval. After the conversation was over, Loopy Toad, who had been crouching on the side and listening for a long time, finally understood that Grenade Throwing's call was actually for Wang Ling. Everyone knew that it had a pretty good relationship with Wei Ji, and was one of the few friends Loopy Toad had made while it had been cultivating on Earth. Loopy Toad replied, "It won't be difficult, I just need to give him a heads up." "Thank you, brother dog." Grenade-throwing senior immortal smiled brightly. "Also, are you investigating the matter of the fake numinous mother?" Loopy Toad asked with concern at that moment. We've already done some scouting based on the clues Jiang Yingyu provided. We should have some news in a few days." With that, the call ended. Wang Ling thought he could finally rest, but in the end, there was a series of messages in their number 60 high school delegation, 2, WeChat group. Why was it 2? That was because Lotus Sun wasn't among the members. This group, as well as the messages, had all come from Wang Ling's call with Grenade-throwing senior immortal. Someone had set up a new group chat, leaving all the teachers and Lotus Sun outside, and seemed to be secretly plotting something. Wang Ling scrolled up the chat history and skimmed through it several times before he realized that everyone was discussing visiting Lotus Sunday Super Chin. "Did you find out?" "What hospital?" "Hirogwa," my uncle replied. "Songhai 7-star First Military Medical Hospital." Xia Ming sighed. As expected of classmate Lotus Sun. "It's not easy to get into this hospital, then the question is, who among us is free to visit classmate Lotus Sun tomorrow?" "Let me say this first, I actually really want to go, but the problem is that after the competition, my mom wants to take me out for a walk." Super Chin, walk. Xia Ming, it wasn't easy for our school to win first place, and I'm one of the representatives. Shouldn't I go out and show off to our relatives? Hirogwa, me too, Super Chin, +1. Li Yuyue, me too. By the way, I also made a nutritious bento for classmate Lotus Sun, which can speed up her recovery. Who's free tomorrow? Seeing this, Wang Ling finally couldn't take it anymore. He felt that if he didn't say anything, this matter would most likely fall on him. Just then, Super Chin suddenly said, "How about this? Those who don't say anything now will form a group to visit Lotus Sun tomorrow." As soon as he said this, Fang Xing, Wang Zhen, Lu Qingyi, Zhen Yuan and Gu Xuanji sent a string of smiley faces. Before Wang Ling could send an ellipsis, these people had already finished sending before him. These people were actually all spying on him. Wang Ling. Super Chin, then Wang Ling, you'll go tomorrow. Stop pretending, I know you're also spying on us. Our consolation gifts will be sent to your house at noon tomorrow. Take them to classmate's son on our behalf. Wang Ling. Chapter 12-13. At noon, Wang Ling received a large box of things which Super Chen and the others had prepared single-handedly. Although Wang Ling had seen the list of condolences last night, he was still dazzled when so many things were laid out in front of him. There were all kinds of things in the box, except for elixirs. Everyone knew very well that Lotus Sun's family produced elixirs. It was possible that the chicken blood tonic pills she bought on the market would be produced by a pill company under Huagua Water Curtain Group, so there was no point in giving them elixirs. Xia Ming's gift was a USB. He knew that Lotus Sun actually didn't have a good impression of him, so he had taken out the video of his duel with Wang Ling and edited out all the scenes of him being beaten to make a ghastly video. Li Yuyue had prepared a love bento, which was packed in an insulated magic treasure that prevented spoilage. Wang Ling could smell the fragrance even through the lids. Super Chen's gift was 2 pink dumbbells for women, showing his true colors. However, Super Chen already subconsciously thought that dumbbells were the best gift. Dopigua's gift was a little special. He had carefully selected a rainbow butterfly that was in its cocoon from his family's spirit beast shop. This silkworm pupa was on a branch next to the incubator. Presumably, it had the beautiful meaning of breaking out of the cocoon and becoming a butterfly. Gu Xuanji, Wang Zhen, and the others had just arrived on Earth, and apart from working for grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, they didn't have much savings. Furthermore, they didn't know what to give Lotus Sun, so these gurus from outside Earth had joined forces to buy several hundred masks. It was flu season now, and masks had really become hard currency. Frontline medical staff were in short supply and consumed a lot every day. Relying on their salaries from grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Wei Ji, these people were able to buy these masks, which was already a huge sum of money. Since everyone had given something, Wang Ling felt that it would be a little stingy if he didn't. After pondering for a long time, he finally steeled his heart and stuffed 2 packets of original flavor crispy noodle snacks into the box. In other people's eyes, the value of the crispy noodle snacks definitely wasn't as high as the masks, but in Wang Ling's eyes, they were hard currency that he could exchange for anything. After doing all this, Wang Ling took out a storage bag which he had prepared beforehand, put away all the supplies in the box, and was ready to set off. Before leaving, Mother Wang tossed a cotton mask to Wang Ling from afar. Put it on when you go out. The city is not like 9 Dragon Mountain. It's very strict now. Although you're different from others, you still have to wear a mask. Wang Ling was about to ask Mother Wang what made him different from other people, but her next words directly left him speechless. Other people are afraid of viruses, but you're the virus that's afraid of you. Wang Ling, actually, Mother Wang couldn't be blamed for this, because the viruses in the cultivation world were indeed very scary, especially in the era of national cultivation, where it was most likely to produce that kind of super virus. Once the virus was produced in the body, it would be a test of the cultivator's self-recovery ability because ordinary pills would not work at all. Wang Ling was different. The blood flowing in his veins had the ability to purify itself, and any virus that was inhaled into his body would be killed. When he walked down the street, he was no different from a walking air purifier. Thus, the mask Mother Wang gave Wang Ling was only to prevent him from being stopped when he took public transport. In fact, the mask was very breathable and wouldn't hinder his breathing. Mother Wang, the flu in Shanghai City has been pretty serious these 2 days. Everyone else is contributing by staying at home. As for you, you have great ability and great responsibility. If you have nothing to do, go out on the streets and purify the air. Wang Ling, ? On the way to the hospital where Lotus Sun was in the spirit bus, Wang Ling saw that the streets were indeed under curfew, and that there were a lot fewer people out and about. The reason why he was taking public transport was that he was deliberately stalling for time. It was now noon, and Lotus Sun should still be eating. Wang Ling felt that if he used the great teleportation spell to report on his mission, he might be asked to stay for lunch, so he would rather stall for time. It was already 2 hours later when he arrived at Songhai City's 7 stars first military medical hospital. Wang Ling entered from the south entrance of the hospital according to the address Hero Gua had found out. Through the ornate iron gates, Wang Ling immediately saw the snow-white building behind him that didn't look like a hospital at all. From a distance, it simply looked like a castle where the nobles lived. Wang Ling paused at the entrance for a moment, and an old guard wearing a mask came out of the security office. "Young man, who are you looking for?" After asking this question, he looked Wang Ling up and down, and then his mind suddenly jolted. "Aren't you what's your name again? Oh, that's right. You're a speck of ash from that era." Wang Ling felt that his great shielding spell really needed to be upgraded. Although people couldn't call out his name under the effect of the great shielding spell, the problem was that he had found another nickname to replace it. Being called a speck of ash from the era every day was too much. "You're Miss Sun's classmate, right? Miss Sun already told me that as long as a classmate comes today, I'll let you in." The old man smiled and patiently explained the route to Wang Ling. "Young man, walk along the main road. It's the first building, and the first room on the first floor." Before Wang Ling could thank him, the old man had already opened the big iron gate. He had just stepped in when he heard the old man say from behind, "Student, you don't have to worry too much. As far as I know, Miss Sun's health is actually fine. She's here to stay and have fun. The building where Miss Sun lives is full of recovering patients who are recuperating. There's a doctor's meeting in the afternoon, so no outsiders will pass by. Also, the soundproofing is great. No one will find out what she's doing." Wang Ling somehow felt that this old man was hinting at something. When he reached the entrance of Building 1, a mechanical eye peeked out from inside. This was a medical detection mechanical eye. When the medical staff wasn't around, it would be on duty to guide, deliver medicine, and disinfect people in and out of the building. Wang Ling felt his body being hit by a purple sterilizing light. Then, the mechanical eye quickly made way for him to go to Lotus Sun's ward. At the door, Wang Ling saw a quiet young girl in a light blue patient's gown. Her body was turned sideways as she stared out the window in boredom. It was obvious that she didn't want to stay in the ward. But as the future heir to the family, it was her responsibility to obey orders. The sound of footsteps alerted Lotus Sunday. She turned her head, and in that moment, her eyes happened to meet Wang Ling's at the door. Chapter 12-14. At that moment, the building's mechanical eyes had already accurately transmitted the visitor's information back to the Security Command Center in Huaguo Water Curtain Group's building. Information on Wang Ling's visit had already been transmitted here and was projected on a large screen. Sun Yiyuan had been waiting for Wang Ling in the command center for a long time. Why did Wang Ling have to be number 60 High's representative to visit Lotus Sun? In fact, this was also part of Old Man Sun's plan. The person in charge of the command center wiped his sweat. Since last night, Old Man Sun had been plotting his scheme. This included contacting the parents of the members of the delegation, using evil money to bribe them to bring their children to visit relatives the next day, and giving each parent a large gift box of pills from Huaguo Water Curtain Group. Everything she had done was just to help Big Miss Lotus Sun get a chance to get close to a youngster. "Old Master, is he the person you are looking for?" the little brother asked. His name was Jiang Xiaoche, Old Man Sun's #1 Secretary General and the Commander-in-Chief of Huaguo Water Curtain Group Security Command Center. "That's right, little Che, that's him." Sun Yiyuan nodded. To be honest, this was the first time Jiang Xiaoche had seen Old Master Sun so serious. In short, this classmate Wang Ling was clearly a very special existence to Old Man Sunday. That was because the Security Command Center would intervene and obstruct almost all the boys who tried to get close to Lotus Sunday. Only Wang Ling's situation was the opposite. Not only did Old Man Sun not stop them, he even tried to create opportunities to improve their relationship and interaction. This was simply unbelievable to Jiang Xiaoqi. But thinking about it carefully, Jiang Xiaoqi suddenly felt that perhaps this matter had a great deal to do with the yin-yang death calamity on the girl's body. That divining immortal master had once said that the yin and yang death tribulation was the greatest calamity in her life. Those who cast the spell were born at the beginning of the year, and those who dispelled the spell were born at the end of the year. When Xia Ming had first appeared, Old Man Sun had always suspected that he was the one who had set up the curse, so his attitude towards Xia Ming had always been very bad. But from all the recent signs, it seemed that Xia Ming wasn't the one who had cast the spell. Currently, the only reliable information Old Man Sun had was that Wang Ling was most likely the person who could break the curse. Therefore, it is necessary to create opportunities. If Wang Ling's identity was true, the closer he got to Lotus Sun, the better. Little Che, think of a way to keep him here, Old Man Sun said seriously as he stared at the image on the screen. How long are you staying? Jiang Xiaoqi asked. It would be best if we could spend the night. Spend the night. The corner of Jiang Xiaoqi's mouth twitched. He hadn't expected things to go this far. I know this request might be a little too much, and her parents might not agree to it. If we really can't keep him, it's good to keep him here for a while longer. Old Man Sun sighed and said, if the boy has any other requests, try your best to satisfy him. Kids nowadays love snacks. Should we send some over? Jiang Xiaoqi suggested. Well, it's not impossible, but normal snacks are out of the question. All of them were imported high-end snacks. We, the Huaguo Water Curtain Group, have our own status. Yes, Master. It wasn't like Wang Ling had never experienced the awkwardness of being alone in a room with a woman. He wasn't good with words, and didn't know how to flirt with girls like some boys who were good at calculating emotions. He had even been relatively slow and wooden. But for Lotus Sun, Wang Ling's appearance was a huge surprise. On the hospital bed, Lotus Sun instantly sat up straight. Her eyes suddenly flashed as she stared at the door in disbelief. Classmate Wang Ling. The girl had heard that number 60 High would send a representative to visit her, but she had never expected it to be Wang Ling. Wang Ling scratched his head, then took out the gifts everyone had given her. Did everyone give me these? Lotus Sun was pleasantly surprised. Wang Ling nodded. Let me see what's in there. Lotus Sun happily opened the box. Although there weren't any valuable things in the box, every gift was definitely representative. Just by looking at them, the girl could roughly tell who had given them to her. This pink dumbbell is definitely from Super Chin. And the silkworm pupa in the incubator, it looks like it's a rainbow butterfly. It's a good thing you didn't bring Loopy Toad with you, otherwise it wouldn't have been able to resist eating it on the way here. Lotus Sun couldn't help laughing. Wang Ling, the gift was light, but the sentiment was heavy. The warmth of friendship instantly swept away all the gloominess she had been feeling all morning, and she felt warm all over. And most importantly, she immediately noticed the 2 packets of original flavor crispy noodle snacks in the box. Although Lotus Sun rarely ate snacks in order to maintain her figure, she knew Wang Ling and knew that this was probably what he treasured the most. Classmate Wang Ling gave me such a precious gift. Is there anything you want in return? After receiving a gift, she naturally had to return the favor. As the future heir to the group, Lotus Sun was naturally well versed in etiquette. She would return the others' gifts in person when they returned to school in 2 days. And now that Wang Ling happened to be here, she decided to return them on the spot. To be honest, the girl's question really stumped Wang Ling. He was only here to send gifts on behalf of everyone else, and had no intention of asking her for anything in return. Furthermore, the point was that he didn't think he needed anything at all. If he had to say it, he did need pocket money. But the problem was, could he ask for it? Classmate Wang Ling, sit down first. You can tell me directly if there's anything you want. Lotus Sun smiled slightly and pressed the call button to have the mechanical eye wandering outside come into the ward to make a cup of tea for Wang Ling. Wang Ling obediently sat down and picked up the teacup. His mind was blank as he felt the overflowing aroma of tea and the heat hitting his face. For example, magic treasures, elixirs, technological products? The girl prompted further. Then clothes, pants, shoes. Or a house, a car, or land. Immortal warships, aircraft carriers, and laser missiles are fine too. Wang Ling, ? Why was there such a thing? It's fine, classmate Wang Ling, take your time to think about it. Lotus Sun smiled slightly. Then, the girl opened the nutritious bento that Li Yuyue had prepared. The colors of the side dishes in the bento were very exquisite, and the meat and vegetables were evenly distributed, which looked very appetizing. But after carefully examining the size of the bento, Lotus Sun's face instantly turned red. She looked at Wang Ling, feeling a little at a loss. Classmate Wang Ling, this bento, it looks like, it's for two. Now, she finally understood what Li Yuyue had meant when she had texted her at around noon, before Wang Ling had arrived. The text had said, "This is all I can help you with. Classmate Lotus Sun. P.S. Today is Dog Food Day, and Pai Pai Ku has specially prepared 50 red packets. Open Alipay red packet and type in the password Ling Jinren's favorite crispy noodle snacks to grab the red packets." Chapter 12-15. As members of Wang Ling's fan club, under Xiaoming's call, they also started to quietly lay out a plan to trap Wang Ling. For example, this love bento was part of the Trap Wang Ling ******** plan. Li Yuyue had already thought about it when she was making the bento for two. As Lotus Sun's bestie at school, their friendship had deepened after the National Body Technique Exchange Conference this time. Helping others achieve their goals. This was what a bestie was supposed to do. Instead of thinking about comparing boyfriends all day long. When she saw that her bestie's boyfriend was better than hers, she wanted to steal him. Especially in a situation where her bestie was a popular young lady, turning herself into a wingman to assist her was the best way. Li Yuyue was very clear about this. As long as she succeeded, her path would be wide open. Snatching something from the young lady, whether it was a person or an item, would probably end up being dragged out by the bodyguards and thrown into the river. Lotus Sun closed the lunchbox with a flushed face. She really wasn't ready to share a lunchbox with Wang Ling, and was so nervous that her heart was about to jump out of her chest. Classmate Wang Ling. Can you play video games with me? There's an arcade on the 3rd floor. Lotus Sun requested. In order to make the situation less awkward, the girl used her usual trick, changing the subject. Wang Ling was blank. He couldn't figure out why there was an arcade in this hospital building. This hospital is very special. There's an arcade on the 3rd floor, and you can directly swipe a card or scan a code to buy game coins. It's also called the Employee Wage Recovery Plan. Wang Ling didn't expect her to know the hospital structure so well. He listened to the girl's incessant chatter as she explained the situation in the arcade. The purpose of building the arcade is to give medical staff a chance to relax. The most popular facility is called the Medical Disturbance Boxing Room. Almost every day, the city will add malicious medical troublemakers to the list of untrustworthy people, and these people will be turned into game data and turned into enemies in this facility. Beating the enemy will earn you points, and the top 3 players on the monthly ranking will get extra bonuses. It was clear that this wasn't the girl's first time being hospitalized for observation. There might be some hidden story behind this. Lotus Sun hadn't been seriously injured during the competition, but Huagua Water Curtain Group had arranged for her to be sent away overnight. Everyone felt that they were being overly protective. But looking at all the signs now, Wang Ling felt that something might have happened to her. He quietly activated his king's eye and gazed at Lotus Sun's soul. The young girl's soul was as pure as water. Just like her sword spirit Mysterious Sea, there was no trace of contamination. Wasn't it a curse? Wang Ling never thought that his first instinct would be wrong. Driven by curiosity, Wang Ling wanted to find out more about what on earth had happened to the girl. In the end, the girl ate a pink pill, and smoke instantly rose from her body, as if she were a magical girl who had changed clothes in an instant. This was the 100 Transformation Pill, a pill specially designed by Huagua Water Curtain Group for the majority of women. It could fuse one's clothes and cosmetics with space compression technology. After taking it, one could instantly change clothes and put on makeup within 2 seconds. At this moment, the young girl was wearing a pure white dress, and she looked like a brand new person. "Student Wang Ling, let's go." The girl smiled. Wang Ling sighed in his heart. Calculating the time, he felt that it would be late for him to go home again. But playing video games with the young girl at the arcade was better than eating a boxed lunch in the ward. There weren't any crispy noodle snacks or pepper in this lunch box. Although it was beautifully made, Wang Ling didn't have much of an appetite. At that moment, a new message came from Huagua Water Curtain Group's Security Command Center. "Master, the hospital's mechanical eye reports that Miss and that boy are currently moving toward the arcade on the 3rd floor. Jiang Xiaoche reported the current situation truthfully. Playing video games is good. This is how young people build relationships." Old Man Sun nodded with satisfaction. The more he looked at Wang Ling, the more he liked him. In the ward, her granddaughter had listed out so many things, including houses, cars, land, and even laser missiles. But this boy was completely unmoved. It was truly rare in the world to see a teenager who was indifferent to fame and fortune, and had no desire for money or material things. "Master, what do you plan to do? Let's see what they want to play and act accordingly. I remember that this arcade is funded by our group, right?" "Yes, we can adjust all of the equipment remotely." At that moment, Jiang Xiaoche looked at the image on the screen. "It looks like Miss and the others are going to play claw machines." "A claw machine?" Old Man Sun smiled. Claw machines were a good opportunity to test Wang Ling's patience. Some youngsters would deliberately destroy dolls if they couldn't catch them. Old Man Sun wanted to see if Wang Ling would become impatient. However, most claw machines actually had their own internal settings. For example, it cost 1 game coin to catch a doll, and the claw machine's internal settings would increase the strength of the claw on the 49th attempt, making it easier to catch the doll. Of course, they were happy to catch a doll, but in fact, they had just spent 49 yuan to buy a doll. Of course, that didn't rule out the possibility that some claw machine gurus could analyze the mechanics and use hooks, drifts, and so on to clear the claw machine again and again. These people would be blacklisted by the arcade. Change all the dolls to the heaviest ones, and adjust the strength of the claw to the loosest, Old Man Sun ordered at that moment. "Yes." Jiang Xiaoche nodded. Thus, when Lotus Sun took Wang Ling to the claw machine, he saw that it looked like this. Each of the dolls in this claw machine was the size of a basketball. The most outrageous one was the claw. It was the size of an ear scoop. Even Lotus Sun felt that the claw machine structure was a little different from before. "Classmate Wang Ling, this might be the most difficult claw machine at the moment." The girl explained helplessly. She glanced around at the nearby claw machines, and found that almost all of them were like this. It was impossible for such a small claw to catch such a big doll. But in theory, it wasn't impossible to catch them. As long as the claw was strong enough, it might be possible to grab the ring on the back of the doll's head and pull it out. "Classmate Wang Ling, do you want to try?" The girl looked at the black-hearted claw machine and felt a little hopeless. Contrary to the girl's expectations, he actually really intended to catch them. Wang Ling answered, being a man of few words. "Well, I'll help you insert the coin, but can you really catch it?" The girl was still skeptical. Wang Ling indeed didn't have much experience in catching dolls. He couldn't even be considered a claw machine guru. As for why Wang Ling was interested in this claw machine, the reason was very simple. Because there were dolls in this claw machine. There were all kinds of raccoons. At that moment, Wang Ling had already put his hand on the claw machine's lever. He was going to start showing off. Chapter 12:16. Admittedly, as long as Wang Ling used magic, he could easily catch any of the dolls inside. But it was only interesting to catch dolls with skill. There was no need to use a sledgehammer to kill a chicken. Using the heavenly Tao to catch dolls was a little too much. On the side, the girl's eyes were full of anticipation. She could roughly guess why this row of doll-catching machines in front of her was completely different from before. It was probably the result of someone secretly messing with them. Jiang Xiaoqie, when she got the chance later, she would definitely make arrangements for this person. At that moment, Wang Ling's eyes were fixed on the raccoon inside the machine. One of the key elements of a doll-catching machine was to learn to be one with the eye. Wang Ling used the king's eye's 3D vision to observe and analyze the position of each doll. These dolls were very close together, and since they were so close, there was bound to be friction, which depended on the surface area of contact between the dolls. With the king's eye's 3D vision, Wang Ling very quickly made the best decision. He used the joystick to move the hook over. In the end, the hook, which was the size of an ear pick, was too light, and before Wang Ling could move it to the designated position with the joystick, it started to shake wildly in the air. On the screen, Jiang Xiaoqie couldn't help laughing when he saw this scene. At this level of difficulty, no one would be able to successfully catch a doll. This was nightmarish difficulty. Only a top expert at claw-catching machines would have the same small probability of catching a doll as drawing an SSR. When the small hook in front of him started to shake at a high frequency, Wang Ling already realized how difficult it would be to catch a doll with pure skill. But this wasn't going to stump him. There were still 30 seconds left on the machine's countdown timer. The hook in front of him was really too swaying, and even after reaching its target, it was still swaying non-stop. Thus, Wang Ling came up with an idea and decided to use the second adjacent machine. "Student Wang Ling, you can do it." Lotus Sun didn't know exactly what Wang Ling was going to do, but she still obediently helped him put in the game token. As the second machine started up, Wang Ling moved the hook to the edge of the second machine via the joystick. Under everyone's gazes, he started to shake the joystick like crazy. The higher the joystick's frequency, the higher the frequency of the hook's shaking. Suddenly, Jiang Xiaoqie seemed to know Wang Ling's goal. "Quick! Increase the weight of the lever." Once again, he increased the lever's resistance to the maximum, but unfortunately, this wasn't enough to stop Wang Ling. Report. "I've already increased the resistance to the maximum, but it doesn't seem to work." The staff in charge of adjustments frowned. They had never seen something like this before. Even though they had already adjusted the resistance to the maximum, the joystick was still moving left and right flexibly under the young man's control, and the frequency of its movement was getting faster and faster. It had to be said that the joystick was indeed of excellent quality. Even after Wang Ling's torment, it still stood firm and didn't break. When the frequency of the shaking reached the limit, the two hooks on the left and right actually produced a resonance at this moment. It formed a powerful magnetic field. The raccoon doll that Wang Ling had taken a fancy to earlier actually floated like a magnetic levitation object under this magnetic field. Lotus Sun, ? Elder Sun, ? Jiang Yish, ? Wang Ling seized the opportunity to slap the glass on the outside of the claw machine. It was a very precise strike. The huge raccoon fell into the hole at the exit with great precision. Bending down to pick up the raccoon doll, Wang Ling felt a sense of accomplishment in his heart. Sure enough, it was more interesting not to use magic on claw machines. Wang Ling tore off the little note tied to the raccoon's tail. In fact, this note was an exchange voucher that could be exchanged for a box of crispy noodle snacks at a designated shop. This was also the main reason why Wang Ling had chosen claw machines in the first place. If it wasn't for the fact that this was one of Lotus Sun's family's businesses, and that he couldn't be too high profile, he would have directly cleared out all the raccoons in this row of claw machines. Tearing off the label, Wang Ling stuffed the raccoon into Lotus Sun's arms. The girl was pleasantly surprised. "Wang Ling, you're giving it to me." Wang Ling nodded. His goal had just been the little note. Since he had already achieved his goal, the doll's value no longer existed. After all, as a platinum member of the Crispy Noodle Snacks flagship store, Wang Ling could use his spending points to exchange for no less than 1,000 raccoon dolls. In the end, the doll's value couldn't compare to that of the Crispy Noodle Snacks. "Thank you. I'll keep it well." The girl's face beamed with joy. Come to think of it, this seemed to be the first time Wang Ling had given her a gift. In front of the screen, the corners of Jiang Xiaoqi's eyes twitched. He felt that his young miss was completely spoiled. At the end of the day, whether it was the claw machine or the raccoon doll, weren't they both products of their Huaguo water curtain group? Even if this kid wanted to present Buddha with borrowed flowers, he didn't have to do it like this. Jiang Xiaoqi was just about to complain to Sunny Yuan when Old Man Sun actually burst into tears as he stared at the screen. Jiang Xiaoqi was so scared that he swallowed all his complaints on the spot. Old Man Sun wiped his tears with a handkerchief. "Ah! I've never seen my Rong so happy. Not only is this kid excellent at claw games, he also knows how to win a girl's heart. He took so much effort to catch a doll, and he even wants to give it to my good granddaughter, just like me back then." Jiang Xiaoqi was completely speechless. Apart from the day Lotus Sun was born, this was the second time Jiang Xiaoqi had seen Old Man Sun show such an expression. He didn't like Wang Ling, but he didn't dare openly disagree with Old Man Sunday, "Brother Jiang, they're heading toward the gold coin bulldozer." At that moment, the technician in charge of operating the machine gave him the latest update. "Same rules, increase the difficulty. Replace all the coins in the bulldozer with the lightest ones," Jiang Xiaoqi ordered. He was very familiar with this video game equipment, and naturally knew how to tamper with it. As long as he used the light and thin coins and raised the slope of the opening, the game coins would easily stack up and wouldn't fall no matter how much they fell. "Classmate Wang Ling, this machine is really fun." When Lotus Sun went to the video game city, this was practically the machine she had to play. It was very difficult to experience the thrill of pushing the gold coin bulldozer with a small amount of game coins for a big gain with other devices. Jiang Xiaoqi thought that he could stump Wang Ling by tampering with it. Wang Ling stared at the machine and knew that it had also been tampered with. He put his hand on the glass cover in a fit of pique and gave it a light tug. The game coins inside instantly fell out like a waterfall and gushed out of the opening in a steady stream. Lotus Sun estimated the number of game coins downstream, and there were about 300 of them. In the command center, Jiang Xiaoqi yelled, "This is a sabotage machine. It's cheating. Why are you yelling so loudly? Then go find property management." Next to him, Old Man Sun rolled his eyes and covered Jiang Xiaoqi's mouth. Then, the old man's expression quickly changed to one of benevolence as he looked at Wang Ling on the screen. He was very satisfied and couldn't stop praising him. Not bad. Not only does he know how to win a girl's heart, he also knows how to manage money. Jiang Xiaoche. What F*** King Financial Management? Chapter 12-17. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun basically tried out all the equipment in the video arcade on the third floor. Jiang Xiaoche had modified the frequency at which the hamster's head shrank, and when the machine was turned on, the hamster's head shrank back and forth like a ghost. Wang Ling held the small hammer and unexpectedly kept up with the hamster's speed, setting the highest record in the history of the hamster machine. How can a man's hand move up and down rhythmically so fast? This isn't scientific. Jiang Xiaoche was flustered and exasperated. This child's hand speed is similar to mine back then. How is it that he can still shoot in the basket machine when I've clearly shrunk it on purpose? Wonderful, wonderful. I'm afraid this is the legendary condensed version of the shot from Earth. Through the acceleration of gravity over a very short distance, the force of the basketball's fall is greatly increased, and the goal is to shoot the ball in when the hoop isn't paying attention. Sir, wake up. It looks like the machine in the medical disturbance boxing room has been broken. It's very expensive. It's been beaten by so many people, it's normal for it to be in disrepair. The lad might have just made the final cut. Not only does this prove that he's lucky, it's also very manly. He's very similar to mine back then. When dealing with medical disturbances that have nothing better to do, you should teach them a lesson like this. Sir, that's enough, enough. A real man is upright and aboveboard. Even if you do something behind his back, he'll still get through it. Why are you complaining about being wronged and pretending to be pitiful here? The more old man's son looked at Wang Ling, the more he found him adorable and liked him. Jiang Xiaoche. It was already 7:00 in the evening when he returned home after saying goodbye to Lotus Sunday. Wang Ling hadn't expected it to take him so long to play video games. But it wasn't like he hadn't gained anything at all. At the very least, he had gained a lot of points from the arcade. That afternoon, he had climbed to the number 1 spot on the various equipment leaderboards one after another. Wang Ling could use these points to exchange for snacks at any similar arcade in Shanghai City. There were quite a lot of arcade chains in every area of Shanghai City, and there was one on the student street next to number 60 high school. Wang Ling planned to check it out after school this week. Wang Ling knew that his glorious ascension to the top spot in the video game hall rankings was a little too high profile, which wasn't in line with his style, but there was nothing he could do about it. People always have things that they can't control. Especially when he found out that he could exchange points for snacks, he was instantly overwhelmed. However, he didn't leave his real name on the video game hall's ranking list. He gave himself an alias, Gone. What Wang Ling never expected was that his nickname, Gone, became a legend in the video game parlor in just a few days. It was finally Wang Ling's turn to go to school on Wednesday, November 25th. After 2 days of adjustment, the others were clearly in a much better state of mind, but Wang Ling still looked exhausted. Wang Ling, you don't look very well. It's nothing. Wang Ling shook his head. The main reason was that he was too tired yesterday. Following the map that Mother Wang and Father Wang had drawn up, he had traversed the entire Earth as quickly as he could, and using his ability to purify himself, he had basically eliminated the new influenza virus that had been spreading recently. Not only that, Wang Ling had also predicted that one day in the future, some people in the cultivation world would begin to develop curiosity about the universe, and would excessively mine unknown ores from other planets in an attempt to bring them back to Earth for research. In doing so, they would accidentally unseal the virus hidden in the ores in the universe. Thus, Wang Ling made another trip to Earth, and purified hundreds of galaxies near it. By the time Wang Ling rushed back to Earth, it was already morning. He directly changed into his school uniform and seamlessly ran to class without even taking a break. But Wang Ling was very good at adjusting himself, He only needed to sit down and calm down for 10 minutes or so, and he would be full of energy again. Fortunately, it was still morning self-study time, and there was enough time for Wang Ling to rest. As for his studies, although Teacher Pan had compiled and distributed videos of their classes during their 2 days off, Wang Ling hadn't watched them for even a second. Even watching them at twice the speed was a bit of a waste of time. For Wang Ling, the fastest way to learn was his rapid quantum wave reading spell. The first class on Wednesday was Theory of History. Old Antique walked into the classroom to ask Lotus Sun to help him distribute the revision outline, but it was only then that he realized that Lotus Sun's seat was empty. "Student Lotus Sun hasn't recovered yet?" Old Antique asked. "I think she's still under observation," Little Peanut raised his hand and answered. "Still under observation." Old Antique frowned. He had actually examined Lotus Sun's injury before, and it actually wasn't that serious. Old Antique's intuition told him that Huaguo Water Curtain Group might be worried about something, which was why they had kept Lotus Sun in the hospital all this time. In name, it was for observation, but in fact, it was for protection. After all, Lotus Sun had attracted a shadow stream killer before, and this time, she had made a name for herself through her battle with Yi Jiang in the national competition. There was indeed a chance that some people would be jealous and take advantage of Lotus Sun's injury to make another move. But the problem was that there hadn't been any movements in the killer world recently. Old Antique was bewildered. Ever since he and Taoist Tao Tai had become friends again, under their unified command, there hadn't been any more trouble in the killer world. Now, the entire professional killer world was about to become a professional team that got rid of the tyrants and exposed fakes. There were even people scrambling to help an old lady cross the road. So, maybe there was another reason for this. Putting this question aside for the time being, Old Antique decided to go to class first. Picking up a brand new piece of chalk from the lectern, he turned his plump body around and wrote down today's lesson content on the blackboard. Unexpectedly, Wang Ling was familiar with these 4 words. Numinous Mother. Playing with the chalk in his hand, Old Antique introduced the 4 words on the blackboard with some pride on his face. Does anyone know what kind of person Numinous Mother is? If you do, I can reward you with a spicy strip. As soon as he said this, the whole class fell silent. According to normal class procedure, Old Antique began to call out names and ask, "Hirogwa, do you know?" To be honest, this question really stumped Dopigwa. When he saw Old Antique write these 4 words, he had been about to text his uncle for help. "Hirogwa, teacher." "I don't know." "Then Gu Shuanji, do you know?" "Teacher, I don't know either." Gu Shuanji shook his head. Wang Ling. At that moment, Wang Ling really wanted to answer with the words, "My mom." But if he said it, someone had to believe it. Chapter 12-18. What was it like to listen to a teacher tell his mother's story in class? Wang Ling had a feeling that this theory of history class was going to be very magical. There were actually quite a few people present who knew Numinous Mother's true identity. The people from the domain of the gods all knew, but they were just pretending to be ignorant. Sometimes being ignorant wasn't a bad thing. When people were alive, they had to be a little more muddle-headed when they needed to be, and they wouldn't have so many worries. Seeing that Wang Ling couldn't answer, Old Antique nodded in satisfaction. He had already expected this situation, and his expression was very happy. The truth was that since the first semester of number 60 high school, Old Antique had been looking for an opportunity to talk about his Shifu, Numinous Mother, but unfortunately, he hadn't been able to find a suitable entry point. Now, after the national competition, he had finally found one. It seems that all of you don't know who this Numinous Mother is. So, today, let's talk about her. Old Antique had a proud expression on his face because of his deep respect for this name. So although Old Antique loved to talk about gossip in theory of history class, Wang Ling wasn't the least bit worried that the content of this class would go astray. Since he was talking about his shifu, the content would definitely be very positive and full of energy. Students, in the previous class, we talked about the story of the two epic-level killers who founded the ranking list of killers, Gorgeous Itinerant and Daoist Tao Tai. As a matter of fact, this numinous mother is related to these two people. Old Antique turned to the crowd and said, "Numinous mother is the ancestor of the world of killers. Whether it's Gorgeous Itinerant or Tao Tai, they're both her disciples." When he said this, the whole class was in an uproar. Wang Ling and the other people from the domain of the gods also opened their mouths wide and pretended to be very surprised. As expected, the atmosphere in the class began to liven up as Old Antique spoke. "Why is she named this? Has anyone seen what numinous mother looks like? Numinous mother should be a woman, right? No one has seen what numinous mother looks like. Even her two disciples don't know. As for why she got this name, I think it might be her label for herself. Because of her uncanny assassination skills, she was given this name. As for whether numinous mother is referring to her own gender, I'm not too sure," said Old Antique. Hearing this, Wang Ling sighed in his heart. In fact, there were hints in numinous mother's words. As far as he knew, Mother Wang had already decided on his name before she gave birth to him. If she gave birth to a boy, he would be called Wang Ling. If she gave birth to a girl, she would be called Wang Ling. Therefore, the second half of the numinous mother's name, numinous mother, meant Ling, mother. Why did teacher suddenly mention this person today? At this moment, someone in class raised a critical question. The numinous mother has always kept a low profile. She has never revealed herself. All the major assassins in the assassin world have formed the numinous mother foundation. They are specifically looking for the whereabouts of the numinous mother through crowdfunding. Although no cultivator knows where Mother Spirit is, there is still a lot of evidence that shows that Mother Spirit has already reappeared in Jianghu. For example, in this year's national competition, there were traces of Mother Spirit appearing. The numinous mother appeared in the national competition. The whole class was shocked again. This time, even Wang Ling was stupefied. His mother was clearly resting at home. When did she participate in the national competition? Could it be the fake numinous mother that Jiang Yingwei had mentioned before? In this year's national competition, because of a mysterious manipulator behind the scenes, a large number of dark network wanted criminals who had died were resurrected. Huaxiao Alliance dispatched a large number of cultivators to stop this, and among those who were resurrected was that dark ancestor CS Sanshao who shocked the whole world back then. That dark network founder CS Sanshao. Hero Guo couldn't help sweating at the mention of this name. Previously, when he had been looking up information in the library, he had accidentally seen this name. Filled with great curiosity, Master of Dopey had decided to climb over the wall to see if there was more information on the external network. In the end, what dark ancestor CS Sanshao had done back then had left him unable to eat for several days in a row. This was an absolutely cruel and merciless person whose level of evil was beyond the scope of a normal person's understanding. It seems that some of you know who on earth this person is. Old Antique frowned when he said this. If CS Sanshao had really come back to life at that time, he would have immediately taken revenge on the whole world, there's no doubt about that. Teacher, what happened next? A lot of factual evidence shows that CS Sanshao was already killed. I also saw a picture of his corpse through some channels, but because of confidentiality regulations, I can't make it public to you. Old Antique said, based on my judgment, CS Sanshao died from a very brilliant assassination technique. When Old Antique said this, the people in the domain of the gods also started to discuss this in their separate mental space. Jin Yuan, Wang Zhen, didn't you go to the stalactite cave? Didn't you see CS Sanshao? Wang Zhen, no. It really wasn't me. After Little Silver, Loopy Toad and I defeated Li Huanran, we practically swept the entire way. Jin Yuan, then how did this Xie Sanchao die? Could it have been Senior Ling? No. Wang Ling flatly denied it. At the time, he had been busy playing meteorites with Wang Ying, and had no idea how Xie Sanchao had died. By the time he returned from space, Wang Zhen had practically taken care of everything on his side, and it really had been a draw without the slightest difficulty. Right now, Wang Ying was probably the only one who knew the answer. Wang Ling looked down at his own shadow. Wang Ying shivered under his gaze. I was focused on fighting you at the time, how could I have cared about this Xie Sanchao? Wang Ling was speechless. Weren't you the one who brought this Xie Sanchao back to life? I did a lot of research, and I think Xie Sanchao is indeed the strongest of the Dark Network members. But this person is too paranoid. I wanted to feed him frozen dumplings to activate his shadow Dao, but this person pretended to swallow the dumplings, and then spat them out behind my back, causing his battle strength to plummet. Wang Ying couldn't help ridiculing him. If he had activated Shadow Dao obediently, how could he have been so easily killed? Wang Ling, at that moment, in the classroom, Old Antique opened his mouth again. According to the evidence I saw, when Xie Sanchao's body was found, there were 862 fatal stab wounds. It was an assassination that was completed in 1 second at an extremely fast speed. Every wound was of the same depth, and it was so precise that it made one's hair stand on end. Old Antique sighed. Apart from that primogenitor of the world of assassins, Numinous Mother, no one else can do such an assassination technique. Wang Ling. Chapter 12-19. Stabbing 862 times in 1 second was indeed difficult for anyone who wasn't a top expert to achieve this kind of hand speed. The problem was that although Mother Wang was known as Numinous Mother with the Axe, that was just a pseudonym she had used back then. The real Mother Wang was just an ordinary person. If Mother Wang had to write a resume, it would definitely go like this: Wang Yulan, female, lives in the East Wang Road area, married. Follows the lifestyle of a housewife every day, rests at 10 p.m. every day, doesn't smoke, and only drinks a little. Drinks a glass of warm milk before going to bed, then does 20 minutes of eye exercises before going to bed and sleeping until daybreak. She's an ordinary woman at the body refinement stage who never leaves her stress and fatigue to the next day. As his thoughts returned to Old Antique's class, Wang Ling felt that this time, Old Antique's train of thought had gone completely astray. He had been too stubborn in believing that the legendary Numinous Mother with the Axe was a top expert, which had led to his current blindness. But the identity of the person who had killed Xie Sanchao had become another mystery. Recently, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had been investigating leads on the fake Numinous Mother with the Axe, and Wang Ling felt that he might be able to get some answers from here. On the dais, Old Antique was still talking incessantly. Wang Ling felt that he had completely lost his mind in today's class. But it wasn't that Wang Ling couldn't understand. He had finally thought that he had found some clues about his Shifu whom he had never met, and it was indeed hard to suppress his joy and eagerness to share it with everyone. Wang Ling couldn't stop Old Antique from continuing. Students, it goes without saying how powerful Numinous Mother with the Axe is. Who was that Xie Sanchao? He was in the limelight back then, and at his peak, even that old devil might not have been his match. But it was this kind of person who was given a second life, and before he could do anything, Numinous Mother with the Axe sent him back to the next world. Old Antique pushed up his old-fashioned glasses and said, although I also want to know what on earth this Numinous Mother with the Axe really looks like. But if you're interested, maybe you can go to the video game arcade to find out. Wang Ling, I wonder if there are any students who like to play video games. If you do, you'll definitely find a gaming expert called Algon on the ranking board. This person broke multiple game records in a short span of a day, especially in the whack-a-mole game. That kind of hand speed can be said to be unprecedented, comparable to Numinous Mother's record of 862 stabs per second. If teacher's guess is correct, this person is the Numinous Mother. At this point, Wang Ling was instantly at a loss for words. Old Antique's guess was completely off the mark. When Old Antique mentioned, gone, it also sparked a heated discussion in the class. Arcade. Gone, so it's him. Super Chin was filled with deep veneration. This person is very strong. He even broke my shooting record. Who's Forrest Gump? Not the Forrest Gump. It's the dry, crisp, dry. Saying this, Super Chen's pupils suddenly contracted slightly, and he turned to look at Wang Ling. After a few seconds, he looked away from Wang Ling again. Although in the end, Super Chen didn't pin his suspicions on him. But sometimes, it had to be said. He indeed had the urge to get rid of Super Chin. Apart from Wang Ling and a few people from the domain of the gods, no one else in class knew the truth about the Numinous Mother. Old Antique spoke happily, and most of the people in class were just there to enjoy the show. At the end of the class, Old Antique was in a great mood. Not long after he returned to his desk and sat down, a summoning talisman from the headmaster's office turned into a bright stream of light and flew toward him from afar. This light exploded in front of his eyes and turned into specks of dust, which looked especially dazzling. Headmaster Chen's call. Old Antique immediately got up. In the headmaster's office, Headmaster Chen looked very serious. Logically speaking, he should be the happiest person at number 60 High's overwhelming victory in the national competition this time. But it was clearly not normal for him to have this kind of expression. Old Chen, what's with that constipated expression of yours? Old Antique didn't stand on ceremony. He directly sat down in a mahogany chair on the side and poured himself a cup of tea. As the backbone of number 60 High's teaching, he didn't need to stand on ceremony in front of the headmaster. Headmaster Chen took a deep breath and voiced his distress. Yi Jiang's injury is more serious than I thought. Is it that kid from God of Swords Academy? Old Antique raised his eyebrows. This was General Yi's adopted son. Even if he was injured, the medical arrangements wouldn't be bad. Physical injuries can naturally be healed, but psychological injuries are a little difficult. Headmaster Chen sighed. He turned the magic ball on his desk, and an image of Yi Jiang was projected in the air. His entire body was wrapped up like a mummy. We've already used the best treatment methods. When the gauze is removed tomorrow, he'll look like a new person. But... Speaking up to this point, Headmaster Chen changed the angle of the image and zoomed in on Yi Jiang's eyes. In a flash, Old Antique understood what had happened. The teenager's sharp and arrogant eyes on the competition field had already disappeared, and he now looked a little wooden. Is he autistic from being beaten up? Old Antique was startled. It's more serious than autistic. Headmaster Chen said, according to President Qi's judgment, Yi Jiang is suffering from a type of psychological trauma, also known as a pseudo-heart demon invasion. This so-called pseudo-heart demon invasion meant that it wouldn't flare up in the short term, but as time went on, the affected person's mind would gradually be devoured, and in the end, they would completely lose control, even leading to a dark latent period of up to several years. Because it was impossible to judge the extent of the devouring of the mind at each stage, the psychological treatment couldn't be as crude as the treatment for a heart demon invasion, otherwise it would have the opposite effect. If the intervention was too shallow, there was no way to eradicate it. If the intervention was too deep, the illness might be cured, but the person would become a fool. Therefore, this was even more troublesome than a true heart demon invasion. Has President Qi seen it? President Qi's ability to intervene is too strong, it's actually not suitable for him to do it himself. In the end, we also have some responsibility for what happened to Yi Jiang. Speaking up to this point, Headmaster Chen laid out the difficulties they were currently facing. Currently, the best treatment plan given by the psychologist is to persuade student Lotus Sun to have another match with Yi Jiang, and then have a fake match. Will Huaguo Water Curtain Group agree? Old Antique was taken aback. That's why I asked you to come up with a solution. Headmaster Chen had a helpless expression on his face. On one side was number 60 High's investors and board of directors, and on the other was General Yi's Sword God Academy. Headmaster Chen didn't want to offend either of them. Chapter 12:20. On the surface, General Yi had already retired, but in fact he still had some power. When Headmaster Chen had been at 7 stars, General Yi had even been his swordsmanship teacher. On one side was his teacher, who had done him a favor, and on the other side was number 60 High's biggest financial backer. How to balance the two left Headmaster Chen in a dilemma. Helpless, Headmaster Chen could only call Old Antique over. Among all the school teachers, Old Antique was steady and capable of taking on great responsibilities, and was one of the people Headmaster Chen trusted the most. If Old Antique stepped down from this position in 100 years, Headmaster Chen had even considered letting him take over as the next headmaster. Old Wang, what do you think we should do about this? Sunny Yuan is a businessman. He might not necessarily disagree, but he might put forward some conditions. Old Antique lowered his head and pondered. As for what conditions on earth, it was very hard for him to guess. Huaguo Water Curtain Group was as rich as a country, and Old Man's son, who held a high position, had almost already obtained everything he wanted in his life. It was really hard to predict what such a person needed. You have a point. Headmaster Chen couldn't agree more with Old Antique's point of view. People who don't have hobbies don't make friends. Even Mr. Sun definitely has something he wants but can't get. Old Antique said in a deep voice, not everything can be bought with money. Pondering for a moment, Headmaster Chen got up from his seat and straightened his clothes. Then I'll have to trouble you to come with me. I have classes this afternoon. Find someone to take over, or say you're sick. It's normal for the teachers in our school's sports team to get sick all the time. When do we leave? Now. It suddenly darkened in the afternoon in Songhai City. Dark clouds hung in the sky, and it was as if all the light and brightness in the world had been obscured. In the storm, Headmaster Chen and Old Antique took number 60 High's headmaster's car to the Huaguo Water Curtain Group building. It's rare to see this kind of weather, it looks like the end of the world. Headmaster Chen looked out the window. The rain was so heavy that the car's windshield wipers weren't working at all, so the driver could only activate the spirit power barrier to keep the rain out. The spirit power barrier was suitable for extreme weather like this, and could also stop car accidents. The disadvantage was that it consumed a lot of gas, so Headmaster Chen usually didn't use it when he went out. Remember to turn it off when the rain stops, Headmaster Chen said to the driver. Yes. The driver nodded helplessly. You're too stingy. Old Antique couldn't help laughing. It can't be helped. You'll know when you're in this position. We only have so little funding. It was better to be thrifty. We can't be extravagant and wasteful. In the Huaguo Water Curtain Group building, Old Man's son was admiring a few pieces of calligraphy on his desk. The pleasure of the poor was money, while the pleasure of the rich was literature and art. These pieces of calligraphy were all written by the famous modern calligrapher Situ Ji. The full title was 10 Perfect Landscape Paintings. There were a total of 10 pieces. Old Man's son spent a huge amount of money to buy 3 of the 10 pieces from other collectors of calligraphy. Standing on the side, Jiang Shaoqi couldn't help sighing in his heart. He felt that Wang Ling's fondness for eating crispy noodle snacks and collecting cards was similar to his old man's. Looking at the time, Jiang Shaoqi decided to remind him, Master, I heard they're already on the way. I knew Chen Tianxiang wouldn't be able to hold back and would come looking for me. Sun Yiyuan smiled faintly, as if he had everything under control. Huaguo Water Curtain Group had eyes everywhere in Songhai City, even the slightest movement was within their grasp. The old man sitting at the entrance of number 60 high school was in fact also a member of Huaguo Water Curtain Group. Are you really going to help Yi Jiang? That little guy is indeed quite pitiful. Rong beat him into an autistic state in just a few rounds, and she was indeed a little heavy-handed. After the incident, didn't I immediately ask you to send him some tonics so that he wouldn't become a laughingstock? We've already taken responsibility for his physical injuries. If he has a psychological problem and blames it on us, I'm afraid that's a little unjustifiable. When Sun Yiyuan said this, Jiang Shaoqi nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. You're right, master. Some children nowadays were indeed mentally fragile. Perhaps it was because of the difference in their family environment that gave rise to an inferiority complex, or perhaps it was because their parents had spoiled them rotten, and they would fight to the death at the slightest grievance. In the end, it was clear that Yi Jiang's situation today had something to do with General Yi's education. This Yi Jiang has been invincible since he was a child, and with General Yi's true teachings, he has never lost a match since he was a child, said Jiang Shaoqi. Going too smoothly isn't a good thing. When Rong was growing up, I deliberately arranged for a lot of Golden Core experts to disguise themselves as Foundation establishment experts to fight her, and she lost several times. Master is wise. Jiang Shaoqi knew about this. These people had to fight the young lady, and at the same time, they had to ensure that she wasn't hurt during the fight. The reward for one fight was extremely high, comparable to a year's salary for him. But Jiang Shaoqi still didn't quite understand what was going on with Yi Jiang. Master, this subordinate has a question. Speak. Since they can disguise themselves, why don't you have other people use transformation spells to disguise themselves as misfighting Yi Jiang? That's the most troublesome part. Sun Yiyuan said, when that little guy fought Rong, he used the boundless sword qi. It said that anyone who fights with the boundless sword qi will be stained with a special smell, which only the user of the boundless sword qi will be able to smell. The transformation spell can't deceive that little guy at all. Hearing this, Jiang Shaoqi instantly understood. He sighed in his heart at his master's thorough observation of the situation. To be able to sit in the head of the consortium and build up Huaguo Water Curtain groups so well, one really wouldn't be able to sit in this position without some skill. Furthermore, Jiang Shaoqi knew that his old man's cultivation was actually very profound, but he had never shown it to outsiders. Even Jiang Shaoqi, who had assisted him for so many years, had never seen old man Sun fight. A few minutes later, Jiang Shaoqi saw a notification from the building security team. Master, they're already here. They're downstairs, said Jiang Shaoqi. Invite them up. Sun Yiyuan waved his hand. He didn't even look up as he continued to stare at and admire the treasures on his desk. On the other side, Jiang Shaoqi was just about to make arrangements when old man Sun suddenly called him back. Wait. What else do you need, master? I've seen enough of these treasures. Take them out and find a master to make a few copies and send them off for me. Who are you giving them to? The same few people. Keep it a secret. Yes, master. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.